Our story today begins with the hottest possible scene. The day the school caught fire. The main character went to the art room because if he was going to die anyway, he wanted to die in his favorite place. Gio originally thought that everything would end just like that. That everything, including himself, would be reduced to ashes. Carrying that very thought, Gio threw himself into the sea of fire, fully expecting it to be the end of the line. Yet when he opened his eyes, a somewhat hazy thought drifted through his mind. I'm sure this place is real. Crazy enough, a whole week had passed since Gio stepped inside the painting within a painting that he drew with his own hands. Even though he could barely keep his mind together, he was still anxiously worrying about reality. Did those kids evacuate safely, I wonder? But Gio's far-wandering train of thought quickly snapped back when his eyes caught a pair of twitching ears right beside him. He stared at the three-eyed rabbit for a long time, unable to hold back an exclamation. Never in a million years did I think I'd end up in a situation like this. To put it clearly, time here passed in an extremely erratic way. So Gio had no idea how long he had actually been here, but he had managed to get a grip on a few basic rules of this painting. Rule number 1. Everything Gio drew here became reality. He tested it out by drawing a few bright red apples on paper, and the moment he touched them, Gio became the living embodiment of King Midas as the apples from the drawing came tumbling down with a plop right at his feet. If Gio drew a bag of salt, salt appeared. Pots, cooking pans, flowers, and even trees. For a foodie and a gourmet like Gio, this golden touch was a total godsend. That's right, I'm finally free from worrying about food money. However, the limit was crystal clear. It didn't work on human beings. If Gio couldn't help himself and drew some living creature, it was nothing more than a warm corpse. They couldn't turn into living, breathing people. But after a few times shaking in terror at the overly cruel reality, Gio learned to accept it and roll with the punches. I'm actually relieved I didn't end up with some terrifying power. Something that would ruin my peaceful, low-key life like a quiet little potato. Rule number 2. Gio could interact with the outside world through the picture frame hanging on this tree. Since he could leave the painting, he boldly stepped outside once and discovered that nearly 30 years had passed since the fire. Gio enjoyed the glass of water in his hand, letting his thoughts drift into space. Year 31 of the Purification Era. It seemed like the world had completely changed after that day. Just witnessing the insane state of his fellow humans outside was enough to make his brain go numb right through the painting. That bastard is out. Hit him with everything you've got. Wipe him off the face of the earth. That group of people swung around all sorts of bizarre powers just to attack the prey within their sights. From a God's eye perspective, Gio could only watch helplessly as those brutal actions unfolded. He quickly retreated back into the painting with a single goal in mind. I don't have the confidence to survive in a modern society crawling with monsters like this. A portrait has its own life to live. It's way too dangerous outside the frame. Rule number 3. This forest had a completely different ecosystem. Gio had originally drawn just a 2-story inn in a forest, but species of plants and terrain he had never drawn were sprouting up everywhere. And every living creature in this painting treated Gio with pure goodwill. From the branches and blades of grass that were supposed to be stationary, all the way to the little birds, everything radiated warmth toward him. A brave little bird even landed on Gio's shoulder, completely ignoring the glare from the only human in this place. Before he could even figure out what to do with it, a squirrel nudged a berry toward him, sparking a bold guess in his mind. Is it because I'm the one who painted this place? Since they live in my creation, I guess it's only natural for them to be friendly to their creator. And rule number 4 was the system notification board, so familiar to anyone who reads fantasy webtoons. The moment Gio saw it, he jumped in fright, dropping the berry in his hand. Holding his pounding chest, he casually complained, I wish these things would give a heads up before jumping out of nowhere. Rather than being a rule of this forest, this was actually a phenomenon appearing in awakened mutants after the Great Catastrophe. Word was that people on Earth now called them hunters. Gio quickly came up with an assessment of the situation, just like playing a game, It's pretty interesting that I became one of those mutants, too. Speaking specifically about this painting, it felt like a casual, cozy game of gathering and cooking. Once he was finished in his mind, Gio shifted his attention back to the notification board and muttered, "Alchemy? Huh? Not sure if I'll ever use it. Should I try making medicine from the stuff I just picked?" He clicked yes, while casually laughing at himself. Now, this is what you call a proper unemployed life. Time to explore a new feature, repeating the daily cycle of eating and sleeping without having to go to an office job. Gio had never felt happier in his entire life. Today's lunch was stir-fried sweet potatoes with honey. With a mountain of fresh ingredients piled up inside the inn, Gio was thoroughly enjoying his 3 meals a day, something he could never have when he was still working as a teacher. Though he didn't say it out loud, inside his heart, Gio was secretly screaming, "I love this so much." But before he could enjoy himself for long, his eyes shifted into a state of high alert. There's a sound coming from the entrance. Gio locked his full concentration onto the painting hanging on the tree trunk, which also revealed the final rule to everyone. Back in the art room where the fire took place, the only thing that remained completely intact was a portrait. Gio had become a painting. His face on it was so vivid it looked no different from a photograph or a life portrait. And even the eyes in that painting could move, followed by strands of black energy that began to dance in the air. It wasn't clear whether they were clinging to Gio or if he was the one generating the dark aura, but all of it converged toward a single goal, forming the title of Gio's portrait. Gio only poked half his body out of the painting because he was still holding on to a lot of caution regarding the space outside. After a few seconds of glancing around, he quickly arrived at a conclusion. Was that just a wild animal passing by? Thinking this, Gio didn't bother lingering and headed right back into his own world. He continued his gathering spree in an extremely joyful mood. Gio genuinely loved this sacred haven. On the first day, he showed off his culinary skills with a pile of juicy berries. On the third day, Gio stepped into the role of a master craftsman to move the fire pit and the large pot outside. As always, he consistently found joy in this simple life, knowing exactly how to treat himself, so much so that he wouldn't mind if he never left this painting again. Small wonder that after eating and drinking his fill, Gio sprawled out on the chair and quietly assessed. This is just incredible. But he had no idea that the world he was living in was facing its very first threat. Someone had realized the anomaly of the painting inside the art building over here. This was the one. Look at this painting. How come this is the only one that didn't get burned? It's still completely intact, right? It looks like it even has a title. One of the two who just made the discovery boldly stepped closer to inspect the situation. Let's see here. It's called Portrait of Gio. The other person couldn't help but speak up in admiration. Man, traveling with someone who has an appraisal skill really is convenient. Kanhai put his hands on his hips and stated the obvious truth. Since its name shows up, it's definitely an item. But is it from Earth? However, Du Song, with eyes that saw nothing but dollar signs, offered a completely opposite take. Oh, come on. In an abandoned school deep in the mountains of Kangwon, this is the only thing left untouched. And you still haven't figured it out? Afraid his teammate might beat him to a sweet deal, his tone grew increasingly urgent. It obviously drifted out from some dungeon. Du Song moved lightning fast, not just talking, but also wrapping a cloth over the painting with agile hands, getting ready to haul it off to an exhibition. Now let me grab it. Hurry up. Do you think they'll count something like this as a find? At the very least, the Collectors Guild is going to lose their minds over. Just imagining the glorious scene in his head was enough to make his mouth curl into a smug grin. We're about to strike it rich. And so, while Gio was busy enjoying his peace and quiet, the entrance of the painting kept automatically changing continuously, from vast green meadows to modern metropolises, then from storage warehouses to the luxurious building of an auction house. And Gio's final location was appearing right in front of hundreds of eyes so they could put a price tag on his face. People with a passion for collecting quickly locked their eyes onto the paint. Bid paddles were raised one after another as if money held no value here at all. Finally, it found its way to the display room of a collector who raised paddle number 5. Having found its new owner, the painting quickly left the auction center to take its place in another grand, dedicated spot. The elevator carrying Geo's entrance instantly came to a stop at floor E5. Baisa Bayal used a telekinesis skill to move objects without touching them, leisurely carrying the painting along his lavish hallway. In this secret base of his, he had a massive collection of rare items from all across the world, ancient and modern. Yet Baisa Bayal still reserved the most honorable position for Geo's portrait. He officially hung it right on the central wall of the room, where anyone stepping inside with working eyes could see it immediately. Baisa Bayal was not only an S-rank hunter with an appraisal skill, but also the leader of the Collectors Guild. Right now, he was blissfully uttering a single verdict, a masterpiece. But to get to this result, we have to rewind the clock back to a moment ago. The person beside him appeared and immediately called out, "Guild leader." Jae-sung didn't even wait for Baisa Bayal to reply before timidly laying out his concern. "I know our guild's name is Collectors, but isn't this going a bit too far?" Gently wiping the picture frame, he asked back with a serious face. "Are you telling a collector not to collect?" Baisa Bayal finally finished pampering his prize catch, taking the chance to throw in another line at his colleague. "Sounds pretty offensive, don't you think?" Jae-sung questioned him in frustration. "Do you have any idea how much money we spent on that portrait?" Baisa Bayal didn't hesitate to show off his filthy rich style, shooting back with utmost arrogance. "I use my own money to buy my own stuff. So, what's the problem?" Jae-sung was completely out-argued, but he still tried to salvage the situation. Despite that, Baisa Bayal cut him off without a single flinch. "This piece of art is something even the Hunter Association president wanted to get his hands on. To understand what he meant, we need to turn the clock back 31 years to the time when the Great Catastrophe struck. All sorts of dimensions collided with Earth, creating dungeons, with monsters pouring out from within them. And the arrival and interference of gods left Earth in ruins. But then, the system was created, saving humanity from the brink of extinction. Because one of the symbols of eternity, Hunter Association President Dan Hee-jia, a man who didn't even collect items and whose only hobby was raising monsters, bid up to 200 billion won for this piece of art. We're talking billions of won here. Hearing this astronomical figure for the first time, Jae-sung stammered a bit in his voice. The association president did that? That really is mind-blowing. But despite looking indifferent on the outside, deep down, a wave of anxiety was surging inside him. A piece of art coveted by even the association president, yet my appraisal skill couldn't extract a single piece of info from. Thinking up to this point, Jae-sung immediately bowed deeply to apologize. "My skill is far too lacking to realize the true value of that artwork. I apologize for jumping to conclusions." Baisa Bayal waved his hand with immense generosity to comfort him. "It's fine, if you don't know, I understand." But saying up to here, even he had to admit, "To be completely honest, I don't know what this portrait is either." Jae-sung was so startled by this candid confession that his face turned as dark as a thunderstorm hovering over a mountain peak. Even without raising his head, he couldn't help but ask, "What on earth do you mean by that?" But after everything, Jae-sung couldn't stand the sheer recklessness any longer. So setting aside hierarchy, he yelled straight in Baisa Bayal's face, "Guild leader, you became an S-rank hunter solely because of your appraisal skill. You lead the Collectors Guild, one of the top 3 guilds in South Korea. You are the leader of the Collectors Guild, for goodness sake." Jae-sung reached this point and automatically shut his trap, completely frozen by his own thoughts. An item that even someone like you can't appraise? If something like that actually exists, what is going to happen to Earth? Baisa Bayal, acting like water off a duck's back, cheerfully threw in his punchline. "Flattering me like that isn't going to get you a bonus, you know." Jae-sung was at his wit's end, raising his voice even higher. "You know very well that's not what I meant. Something more dangerous than anything we've ever collected." Yet Baisa Bayal casually played along with his point. "Bingo." And facing Jae-sung's completely stunned expression, he firmly emphasized, "Which is precisely why I want it all the more." Baisa Bayal took his silence as understanding, turning his attention toward the ridiculously expensive painting. "I wonder who it's depicting? If this is a work created by human hands, it really is far too magnificent. Honestly, even if it wasn't made by human hands, it's still just as exquisite." Baisa Bayal was like a man possessed, pouring out endless fancy compliments without holding back. It carries such a vivid sense of life. It's as if a living, breathing human being is trapped inside. Right at that moment, Gio's eyes in the painting reacted to the outside world. It seemed Baisa Bayal caught that subtle shift too. His pupils involuntarily shrink. The painting quickly radiated a gloomy aura, turning the space around Baisa Bayal pitch black. Trapped inside, he could only ask in his mind for a moment, "What is this?" It's completely dark. Baisa Bayal unconsciously touched his eye, which was the only source of light here, as his mind kept spinning, deep, profound, and bursting with color. After a few twists and turns, he finally found an object that could be compared to this painting, like the universe itself. But the moment Baisa Bayal hit upon the truth, the painting snapped right back to its normal state. As for him, he remained frozen with his hand raised, looking no different from a wooden statue. That seemingly lifeless exterior was actually hiding an explosive storm raging inside Baisa Bayal. That's it, without a doubt, a piece of art that even my own eyes can't appraise. There's no way it's just an ordinary paint. Meanwhile, Gio, the man inside the painting, also saw Baisa Bayal's beaming face out in the real world. He had dropped his basket a long time ago because there was only one single thought left in his head. I just freaked out my mind. After a moment of being dazed, Gio finally clutched his wildly pounding heart and softly muttered, "Unbelievable. Even in a place this peaceful, I actually feel like my life is being threatened." On top of that, seeing Baisa Bayal's eager-to-talk expression made his heart even more flustered. I knew the view outside the entrance kept changing continuously lately, but who would have guessed someone would actually take the initiative to talk to me? Baisa Bayal didn't even bother giving Gio time to prepare mentally, taking the stage all by himself first. "Knock, knock. Owner, can you hear me?" Every line he uttered made Gio want to jump out of his skin in sheer terror. "Would you like to have a little chat with me?" Completely petrified, he could only scream inside his heart, "No way." But Gio also took advantage of this time to observe in return. The place I ended up in looks like the inside of an insanely luxurious building. Looking at this meticulous, elaborate interior setup, this must be an exhibition room doted on immensely by its owner. After taking it all in, he suddenly felt a massive sense of crisis looming over him. This is huge trouble. This happens to be my one and only exit. Gio even imagined the darkest scenario of his life. At this rate, every time I want to stick my head out to check the world, I'll probably be treated as a home intruder. The cops will swarm me and yell, "Please come to the station to explain yourself." No matter how tearfully Gio tries to explain, I'm innocent. With the first scenario set, the next one rushed in like a tidal wave. And what if people say this is a haunted painting and burn it to ashes? That would be so unfair, absolutely unfair. Life really is brutal. Completely unaware of Gio's exploding brain, Baisa Bayal blamed himself for the silence. Or maybe I was being rude just now. Seems like you're not ready to speak yet. He proactively gave Gio some personal space. "Then see you tomorrow, owner." But this promise only sent him into a deeper panic. Wait, is this old guy actually coming back? Gio's daily routine inside the painting started with a delicious meal. Having cleared away breakfast, he began planning for a snack. Today, the flowers and fruits I picked last time have dried up just right. Maybe I'll make a bit of tea for dessert to see how it tastes. Of course, as an absolute master of time management, the moment the thought popped up, Gio's hands were already moving lightning fast. But once the ingredients were ready, he noticed another missing piece. Wait, I vaguely recall having an entire teapot set, right? Gio didn't waste energy trying to remember where it was, walking straight over to the easel to draw it himself. The moment he stopped his brush, a teapot set just like the one in his imagination fell right into his hands. Gio carefully cradled the entire tea set in his arms, after which he couldn't wait another second and immediately got to work. Before long, Gio was successfully enjoying a fragrant cup of tea with a satisfied look on his face. Setting his teacup down, he couldn't help but sigh out loud. Amazing. The very first new pastime this unemployed, good-for-nothing guy inside the painting managed to figure out was brewing his own herbal tea using the alchemy method provided by the system. Even though Gio followed every single step to a T, he still had a few lingering doubts in his mind, considering the description said its effects were stopping bleeding and boosting immunity. But with a body like his, how on earth was he supposed to test out those kinds of effects anyway? Because ever since he was sucked inside this painting, this physical body of his didn't even have normal physiological needs anymore. Sure, Gio could still walk, eat, and sleep, but he couldn't feel heat or cold at all, so he never sweat. And he was even spared the hassle of going to the bathroom altogether. Staring at his own reflection in the tea, Gio couldn't help a moment of self-deprecating reflection. Just by falling into a painting, I ended up turning into some kind of hyper-evolved entity. In other words, that means I've also been liberated from the fate of scrubbing toilets. But the pressing issue right now isn't that. It's the persistent shouting from the other side. Owner, hearing the familiar voice, Gio blurted out an instinctive complaint. For crying out loud. That's 11 straight days of that middle-aged dude rambling on and marketing himself to me. Baisabayal was completely oblivious to Gio's disgust, still cheerfully declaring, Owner, you're still as quiet as ever today, huh? You don't even need a response, just finding joy in your own monologues. You know, that makes me feel pretty hurt. Doesn't it get boring just resting peacefully in there all by yourself? An introvert through and through, Gio stubbornly maintained his cool facade, but his mind kept firing back counterarguments. Not at all, old man. My potato-like quiet life and my sweet potato-like sweet peace are totally fine. Thinking up to this point, his thoughts inadvertently took a detour. The entrance also signaled that this guy was relatively safe. I guess I'm even a bit grateful that he talks pretty friendly. Before he could finish his assessment, Baisabayal dragged him back to reality with a sonic assault. Owner, seeing you do nothing but blink your eyes inside that frame makes a guy starve for conversation like me go nearly stark raving mad. Fortunately, Gio wasn't paying attention to him. Otherwise, he would have been scared half to death by the violent image. Or is this offering not to your liking? Baisabayal was completely lost in his own wild guesses, despite the person in the painting still giving him the cold shoulder. Normally, the most popular offering would naturally be a sinner, or maybe someone completely pure and untainted. In today's society, finding a sinner is as easy as turning over my hand. So whatever flavor of sinner you prefer, just say the word. Whether it's an item, a contract, or any condition to your liking, just give the order and it's done. Yet in a place Baisabayal couldn't see, Gio reached a completely unexpected conclusion. Man, that sounds like insane pressure. I can already envision the catastrophe if I accidentally blabbed even a single sentence back to him. Baisabayal kept chattering away like a songbird, pouring out his thoughts. Or is it because I'm speaking Korean that you're ignoring me? Wait a second. I tried 27 different languages and didn't see you react to a single word. Owner. Hey, owner. Meanwhile, Gio stuck patiently to his plan of absolute silence. Man, this tea tastes great. If I drank it while talking, I'd probably choke to death on the spot. On the flip side, however, he still didn't give up on probing the other guy in his head. According to what those people who looked like staff members said, this middle-aged dude was the chairman of one of the top 3 megacorporations in South Korea. Mr. Chairman, shouldn't you be working instead of loafing around here all the time? Right at that moment, Baisabayal suddenly shifted his tone. Are you really not planning to open your mouth and talk to me at all? Gio didn't spare him so much as a single glance. Unsure of what trick Baisabayal had up his sleeve, the man suddenly let him off the hook. All right then, I'll come visit you again tomorrow. With that, he threw on his coat and turned to leave the room immediately. Waiting until the figure disappeared from sight, Gio finally set his teacup down and began calculating. I don't sense any malice from the guy, and I don't really hate him since he doesn't seem like a bad person. But for an introvert like him, opening up was a serious undertaking. It just felt a little too energy-draining lately. Gio casually pivoted to an optimistic alternative regarding the guy outside the frame. He can't possibly keep this up forever anyway. Just like today, he left a bit earlier, didn't he? The day will come when he gets totally fed up with it. While deep in thought, He didn't forget to grab a sack of flour to handle his hunger first. Gio skillfully kneaded the dough while continuing to script out the future in his mind. I'll interact with him once that day comes. Just in case he thinks I'm some unreasonable creature, loses his mind, and burns this painting to ashes, I'd be totally screwed. Gio obviously didn't want to gamble with his second life at all. If this portrait got ruined, he had no idea where the world inside the painting would even go. I'm not ready to be put on the stake just yet. As his train of thought reached this point, a remarkably bold plan suddenly popped into his head. He had to reclaim ownership of his one and only exit. When his hourglass ran down to the very last grain, someone also appeared on floor E5 at Bisa Bayal's base of operations. Kim Tae slowed his pace, organizing the plan in his mind. Current time, 4 a.m. Special attention protocols via standard temperature and humidity checks showed him nothing abnormal. Halting abruptly in his thoughts, he looked in a specific direction, finally checking Gio's portrait. But what met Kim Tae's eyes right now was a landscape paint. This discovery made his face freeze in sheer terror. Wait, the records clearly said it was a portrait. While Kim Tae was still standing there dazed, footfalls approached from nearby, closing in. He was completely unaware of the change happening directly behind his back. It wasn't until Kim Tae felt a spine-chilling creepiness that he slowly turned his head. Yet what he saw was merely the familiar empty space. Before Kim Tae could even sigh in relief, a remarkably polite voice sounded right beside his ear. "Hello there." The person hiding his face behind a cloak cautiously raised his self-defense weapon while making a proposal. "Would you like to have a little chat with me?" The paper and pen in Kim Tae's hands tumbled to the ground in a frantic clutter, proving his absolute terror at this very moment. Collectors was one of the top 3 guilds in South Korea. Only the master, Bisa Bayal, his team of 300 defense hunters, and clients purchasing artworks were permitted to set foot in this room. Song-un took slow, measured steps down the long hallway. Then he stopped in front of the elevator doors. The moment his finger brushed the button, he spoke up abruptly. "Is it true there's a rumor about a ghost here?" Caught off guard by such a weird question from the person opposite him, Miho instinctively asked back, "Huh? What was that?" Once both of them stepped inside the exhibition room, Song-un continued asking, "You know about that exhibition room down on basement floor 5? In the past 2 weeks, our side has received a whopping 17 complaints." Miho gasped in shock. 17 whole times? Guild leader Bisa Bayal had a hobby of collecting things labeled as art, and even if it happened to be a monster, he wouldn't give a damn. So those ghost incidents were all caused by monsters. Even so, the more Song-un thought about it, the more puzzled he felt, making him mutter to himself, "Seeing ghosts around here isn't anything new, so why are the Guardians submitting so many complaints?" HR already clamped down to stop the rumors from leaking out. Since the scale is small, controlling information was pretty easy. Still, no one can guarantee this news can be kept under wraps forever. Seemingly oblivious to Miho silently waiting for him all this time, he unconsciously drifted deep into thought. This whole thing is giving me a real headache. Overthinking didn't solve anything since he was already all too used to this kind of stuff anyway. Song Yuen's eyes, sharp as a snowy owl's, locked onto the person across from him. "So what do you want me to do now?" Miho looked just like a little cat that had gotten its wish. "You really are a reliable guy to lean on." As he spoke, he rummaged around in his bag for something. "I really want you to take over as Chief Administrative Manager, Song-un." The other guy's words gradually lifted Song Yuen's mood. "I really appreciate the offer, but that was a bit beyond my bandwidth before." Hearing that, Miho tilted his head in confusion. "I recall you used to be a research team leader back at the association." Song-un lowered his head to hide the awkwardness in his eyes. "That's correct. That's precisely why I declined." The more he talked, the more embarrassed he felt. "Back when I left the association, I caught so much flack for it. Right now, I really don't want to stand out." Now Miho finally understood what the issue was. "Then I won't push you anymore. Besides, those groundless rumors in the exhibition hall do us 0 favors anyway. We're preparing contingency plans after doing a quick report on this incident to the guild leader." Song-un listened to him speak while taking the file passed over to him. "This is a stack of data gathered from witnesses who saw the ghost. Starting next week, We plan to hold reinforced safety training sessions for the staff. Skimming through the information in the document, he noticed that the first witness to spot the ghost at 4:32 a.m. was Mr. Kim. It appeared with the sole description of wearing a black cloak with pale skin. The witness had even drawn a portrait of the ghost based on memory. Song-un was left even more speechless when the info on the ghost noted that it was hard to look him straight in the eye and that he moved without a sound. After weighing it for a moment, he voiced his doubts. The witness statements match up eerily well. For a monster that's supposed to be slinking around and hiding inside an exhibition hall, it seems he has zero intention of concealing himself. Miho nodded slowly upon hearing his analysis. This perplexing issue caused Song Yuan's brows to knit together once more. He shows up as regularly as clockwork, yet up until now, not a single person has suffered any casualties. He mentally recalled a few tough cases he had dealt with before. Out of all the monsters that have ever appeared on Earth, not a single one has ever been harmless to humans. Every entity that crawls out of the dungeon carries absolute hostility. If a genuinely docile monster actually existed, it would have been splashed all over the front pages of global news by now. No, before the public could even catch wind of it, the association would have thrown it into permanent lockdown as a test subject. Song-un pointed an annoyed finger at a few lines of text on the report. And what on earth is this gift-giving nonsense about? Miho calmly explained to him. Word is that upon first encountering the ghost, he'll request a chat, behaving just like a normal human being. Obviously, Song-un couldn't bring himself to believe that kind of rubbish. Who would buy that he's a human being? What is he even putting on such a dramatic act for? Miho voiced his own thought. Or maybe he actually thinks he's a human himself. Setting that aside, after that, he'll ask the staff member to exchange names. The ghost politely introduces himself first to the chosen lucky person. Hello, I'm Seojo Kropka. Miho continued recounting. Even if that staff member is so terrified they barely dare look him in the eye, he just keeps on chatting. The conversation is completely normal and simple. He doesn't pry into deep personal matters at all, and if they hesitate and don't want to answer, he doesn't force the issue either. Once the conversation wraps up smoothly, the thing he hands over to them is, remembering the wisdom of leaving things hanging, he immediately went quiet and pointed at the document. The moment Song-un saw the lines of text on it, he let out a panicked shout. This is... Miho was equally dumbfounded by the bizarre information he had gathered. He said softly, Yep, as you can see, it's food. Song-un was so flabbergasted he was rendered speechless. What kind of monster sounds this docile and domestic, for crying out loud? After a massive internal struggle, he managed to ask Miho a key question. So did our side analyze the ingredients yet? The other guy quickly replied, Coincidentally, the guild leader happens to have a few prisoners on hand lately, so we used them for a rapid test. Song-un had a feeling the owner of this exhibition hall wasn't quite right in the head, borrowing people straight out of the dungeon prison again. Huh? He unconsciously frowned as he asked, And the results? Is it poisonous? Perhaps the final conclusion Miho obtained was indeed a bit startling. Quite the opposite. Man, it's tonic medicine. Sure enough, the moment he heard that, Song-un was so shocked his eyes nearly popped out of his head. The person in front of him continued listing off a mountain of ingredients that had no business being in food items. Blood tonics, digestive aids, painkillers, fever reducers, anti-diarrhea meds. It delivered the exact medicinal effect that the staff member receiving the food actually needed. How food that looks so ordinary can have the efficacy of a miracle drug is something the research team still hasn't been able to figure out to this day. Song-un couldn't utter a single commentary because he was busy sinking deep into his private thoughts. This monster is looking more and more like a tough nut to crack. Not only can he assess a living creature's health condition, but he can also create items that directly impact them. On top of that, his stealth skills are top tier enough to bypass this guild's strict security system and slip into the gallery. After mulling it over for a long while, he finally spoke up. This monster must definitely belong to an extremely high tier. Miho fully agreed with the statement just put forth. Exactly. The troublesome part is that he's expressing goodwill toward us, which makes everything even more complicated. He scratched his head in frustration. Honestly, it'd be easier to handle if he just went berserk and trashed the place. Right now, Suppressing him isn't working, and recruiting him to our side is out of the question either. Kindness from a dungeon toward humans is a terrifying thing. 11 years ago, a few countries sent diplomatic delegations to interact with an alternate dimension civilization. When they returned, every single one of them had been turned into a healthy mutant. Human bodies weren't very useful to those creatures, so out of goodwill, they helped the entire diplomatic delegation revamp their bodies. Song-un calculated quietly in his heart. At the end of the day, a monster is still a monster. Dungeon entities have officially been classified as absolute enemies. This ghost is going to be a tough raid case. Song-un stated his stance directly to Miho. Let me handle this case. This is right up my alley. Since the other guy took on such a tough favor, Miho was genuinely grateful. Thank you so much. Song-un scratched his head in embarrassment. Don't mention it. Handling these cases is my responsibility anyway. Miho's quiet call successfully caught Song-Yuen's attention just as he was about to leave. Almost forgot. There's one more thing I should mention right now. Regarding the day these weird incidents started happening, it kicked off right when the guild leader put Co. Gio's portrait on display down in basement level 5. Now the room door was closing after he had taken on the task Miho requested. He was genuinely annoyed because Baisa Bayal's sweet-talking words kept echoing in his ears. Yu Song-un, please take over managing this new artwork. Yu Song-un, look, we've got another new artwork. Yu Song-un, managing this new artwork. Baisa Bayal's eyes shone brightly like car headlights. You have to step up and take responsibility for this new artwork. This artwork is none other than Co. Gio's portrait. Having helped convey Baisa Bayal's deepest wish to Song-un, Miho quietly bade him farewell. The exhibition room door shut amidst the absolute panic of the guy opposite him, his frail heart feeling like it was about to shatter into pieces. This isn't just adding a little bit of extra chore work. He slowly pulled a lollipop out of his jacket pocket. Looks like I've secured a one-way ticket to endless overtime. The frustration inside Song-Yuen's chest soon drove him to crunch the lollipop to bits. He bitterly set off with tears of sorrow rolling down his cheeks. And so, the investigation into the portrait officially commenced. It was currently 4:30 a.m. Song-un kept a watchful eye on the rumored ghost figure. There he goes, coming out. It appeared in a fully covered outfit, exactly as the witnesses had described. Black cloak, black hair, barefoot, standing around 188 centimeters tall, matching the physical description in the profile, down to a T, showing up only at the crack of dawn when hardly any staff were walking around. This meant one of two cases. Song-un harbored two suspicious theories. Either the ghost knew he was being watched, or his actions had to follow specific conditions and rules. He kept quietly speculating like that, yet didn't dare slack off for even a single second. Timid or devious. But since he has a human form, the latter seems more plausible. Song-un flipped back through the information Miho had handed him earlier. His appearance cycle is completely erratic, yet I managed to catch a chance to observe him on my very first try. I guess I have to count myself lucky on this one. He quickly adjusted the spatial audio attributes on the system panel. Well then, today I'll just stand and watch to double-check that stuttering data. No wonder those folks said he was quiet as a ghost jump-scaring people, right? Song-un caught himself by surprise the moment the skill activated. Probably because those people don't have any auditory-related skills. Actually, he makes extremely faint noises, like the sound of grass blades rubbing together. The more he listened, the more he felt like the dreary sound was kind of weird. This sound clearly didn't fit that 188 centimeters frame at all. But what happened immediately after nearly blew Song-Yuen's worldview sky high? Wait a second. He's actually enjoying the artworks. Song-un couldn't stop thinking about the ghost's actions in front of him. The stuff displayed on this floor is all ultra-dangerous. One careless touch and the whole place goes up in smoke. Or is it because he's a humanoid entity with high intelligence, standing there staring intently without touching anything at all? Is he genuinely interested in art? Or is he just killing time? Song-un was on high alert. Or maybe he's looking for some useful item, to the point where his whole body stiffened up like a statue before he noticed a new problem. Song-un panicked when the ghost, or more accurately, Co. Gio, abruptly turned his head, putting them on the verge of making eye contact. What on earth is this? He stood there wide-eyed, staring blankly at the other party. The vision before his eyes suddenly went dark. Sung-un had a feeling, like Cogeo was gradually fading away, but not quite. The pitch-black darkness of the space made his hair stand on end. Sung-un was as if hypnotized, completely unable to move, even though he knew that massive entity was lingering right beside him. He slowly lifted his head, his mouth still hanging open in sheer horror. Cogeo was moving with incredible gentleness through the quiet night. Sung-un instantly realized that the man was trying to make a run for it. Quick as a flash, he snatched up his specialized case and gave chase. Both fear and sheer exhaustion were torturing Sung-Yuen's spirit. Yet in the very end, all he managed to see was Cogeo's portrait. He completely vanished. The moment he raised his head, his eyes flashed in the dark. Seriously, what the hell? It's not like I even messed with him. And just like that, the first day of investigating Cogeo's portrait came to an end. The rumored ghost of Cogeo had indeed managed to pull off an escape to the outside. Thanks to a few God-given tricks. Phew, what a close call. It almost gave me a heart attack. Recalling Sung-Yuen's eyes gleaming like an owl's in the night gave him goosebumps all over his body. Still, why was that guy huddled up in a corner like that? What was he even doing? Suddenly, a bold thought popped into his head. Could it be that he ran away because he was scared of me? Every single time those other staff members catch a glimpse of me, they instantly take off like their pants are on fire. He turned his head back to look at the scenery inside the frame, but there wasn't a single soul left in that place anymore. In a situation like this, do I look like I'm the one running away? Wearily, Cogeo dumped his rear down onto the grass. I have to keep trying my best to act like a harmless painting. If these misunderstandings blow out of proportion, it's going to be major trouble. Out of nowhere, a chubby rabbit came bounding out. It snuggled up against Cogeo's leg and acted cute while he was still lost in thought about Sung-un. But still, that guy's definitely coming back, right? He thought so, guided by a hunch. Absent-mindedly, he reached out his hand, wanting to stroke the chubby rabbit's fur. Yet the creature darted off lightning fast, leaving Cogeo behind with a silly, dazed look on his face. Those little critters keep hovering close, but the second I try to touch them, even a little bit, they scramble away in a panic. Who would have thought that the guy who was as straight-laced as an uncooked noodle just a moment ago actually had a fragile soul, leaving me wishing I had a pet of my own to cuddle and nuzzle as much as I wanted. The moment that thought crossed his mind, the depths of Cogeo's eyes darkened for a brief second, as he recalled an empty picture frame he had spotted earlier. It was also the exact moment Sung-Yuen's second day of investigation officially began. He had returned to the exhibition room to claim a spot right in front of Cogeo's portrait, the one Chairman Bai Sabayal always treated like his absolute darling. Yet it seemed that the harder he stared, the more subtly the expressions on his face shifted. Unconsciously, he raised a hand to stroke his chin while deep in thought. Seeing how he seemed to bolt yesterday, I figured he'd go into hiding and vanish without a trace. Man, what a relief. Now, then, let's get down to the main business. What happened yesterday proved that this painting is no ordinary monster. From here on out, we need to figure out and strictly follow the rules of this painting to uncover what on earth it is and whether we can coexist peacefully with it. Sung-un felt as though his facial nerve had gone completely numb. Honestly, just standing here and staring straight into those eyes drains every last drop of my energy. But conquering a dungeon isn't just about fighting. It's also about understanding the monsters. Studying the opponent is necessary to find a way to coexist, because attacks don't always yield immediate results. Suddenly, the portrait of Cogeo produced a sound. Would you like to have a little chat with me? The smile on Sung-Yuen's lips froze, but his stubborn pride wouldn't allow him to refuse such an enticing invitation. Of course, I'd love to chat too. He realized that this was an essential survival method in their current situation. Even while hiding inside the painting, Cogeo could still see 5 sparkling stars radiating off Sung-un, the ambassador of goodwill. His fragile soul was beginning to stage a protest. This guy's just way too kind-hearted. Seo was so touched he felt like tearing up. In Seo's current state, it felt almost as if he had just discovered his ultimate disciple. Even though they had given each other a slight shock at first, the guy didn't show even a single trace of fear, even when facing a talking painting like it. Song-un had to strain himself immensely just to force out his second sentence. I apologize for what happened yesterday. Seo's mood soared high as a kite. On top of that, he was even being considerate of him. What an absolute gentleman. Then again, it made sense. In an era where people go around fighting monsters the size of houses, a painting that can move and speak is just an everyday occurrence. He quickly replied to Song-un's words. You don't need to apologize for that. Song-un politely said, thank you for your understanding. Seo didn't want the conversation to hit a dead end, so he offered, may I take the liberty of asking your name? Yet Song-un completely misunderstood his good intentions as a probe for information. The dialogue had begun, following the exact same progression as the 17 people before him. Nowadays, revealing one's true identity to the outside world is extremely dangerous under any circumstances, because a name is the crucial anchor when making a soul-binding contract. He silently calculated. If this painting learned his name, it might end up forcing him into some bizarre deal, for all he knew. But based on the rules this painting had demonstrated up until now, I doubt it would do anything malicious just from knowing my real name. So he spoke out clearly. I'm Yu Song-un. Seo repeated his name once more. I see. One look at Song-un's face made it clear he had a few questions bubbling up. The moment he finished speaking, the person in front of him smiled and said, a whole lot of them. Actually, that's right. Yesterday, when our eyes met, that was you, wasn't it? Nothing could stand in the way of Seo's desire to make friends with these two men. Yes, that was me. Song-un was so stunned, he almost fell over backward. He confessed that easily. He pressed further. So that means you can actually climb out of the painting? To Seo, that was glaringly obvious. I can get out, yes. After he answered, the expression on Song-un's face could be summed up in 2 words. Completely speechless. He spoke up deliberately. You look a bit flustered, don't you? Naturally, being caught off guard made Song-un panic slightly. Damn it, is it really that obvious? He couldn't help but quietly object in his heart. It's just that I was a bit surprised when a non-human entity like you shared information about yourself without the slightest hesitation. Yet Song-un didn't dare babble on like that. I didn't expect you to admit it so openly. The more Seo thought about it, the more speechless he felt. Is there any reason for me to hide it from you? Song-un asked in confusion. Why is that? Seo replied casually. Well, because you asked. The person in front of him still hadn't gotten over his astonishment. What if I asked with bad intentions? Seo countered with a firm statement. That's not going to happen. The moment the words left his mouth, he saw Song-un's eyes stretch wide in shock. Seo gave an honest assessment. You are a kind and polite person, Yu Song-un. That's why I told you. Is that answer convincing enough? Song-un's Adam's apple bobbed with difficulty. He actually has the ability to discern and categorize good and evil in others. He even wondered whether the painting before him would attack those it deemed evil instead of just turning a blind eye. Since he hadn't spoken for a long time, Seo took the initiative instead. Do you have any other questions? His call successfully snapped Song-un's mind back to reality. Yes, I do. Lately, there's been a ghost wandering around this exhibition room, handing out delicious gifts. That ghost is also you, right, Seo? This time, Seo didn't respond immediately like before. Song-un was startled for a moment. Huh. Why is he hesitating to answer this question? A moment later, the person in the painting let out an exclamation. A ghost, huh? Song-un was also a bit nervous, wondering if the entity hated being called a ghost. He quickly expressed his sincerity. My apologies if my question just offended you. On the other side, Seo was feeling thoroughly relaxed after learning the harsh truth. So people were scattering in panic simply because they were terrified? He replied to his apology. It's fine, I understand. A talking painting definitely deserves to be called haunted, though I do have small doubt. I mean, I've never even died before. Naturally, Song-un couldn't maintain his composure after hearing those words. Does that mean he's been inside the painting ever since he was born? Unconsciously, he tightened his grip on the bag in his hand. I was also wondering if there's any reason you keep lingering around this exhibition hall. Yet the ghost in the corner, Cogo, was completely clueless. I was just curious to know what kind of corner I ended up in. After all, I suddenly turned into a painting and got hauled over to this place out of nowhere. The rare and unusual artworks displayed here piqued my interest quite a bit, and I was also curious about what kind of people work here, what their lives are like, as well as their names and personal tastes. Song-un couldn't help but feel skeptical, even in a world as crazy as this one. Cogo said nonchalantly, "When you're alone, you naturally want to find someone to keep you company. If you want to survive, having a social life is a must." For a moment, Song-un didn't know what to say. He thought to himself, he claims to be interested, but his tone sounds as dry as a bone. His curiosity about human lifestyles sounds no different from any other monsters. Cogo even expressed his goodwill to him with utmost sincerity, especially toward a polite person like you. Song-un smiled and said, "It seems you have quite a preference for polite people." The other party instantly shot back. "At the very least, I find the staff members here much easier to talk to than that bright red boss of yours." Song-un let out a quiet gasp. "That boss? Do you mean guild leader Baisa Bayal?" Cogo let out a sign of annoyance. "That old guy talks way too damn much." Obviously, he had just dropped a bombshell of information on the person before him. The old man talks so much that people don't even bother responding. Song-un realized the issue lay in Baisa Bayal having offended him. He tried his best to hold back an inappropriate laugh. No wonder when he handed over this artwork, he didn't bother giving us a single shred of information. Turns out, it's because Cogo found the guild leader so obnoxious that he flat out rejected him and refused to utter a single word to him. Serves the old man right. I told him that personality of his would backfire on him sooner or later. Song-un cleared his throat. "My apologies. Our guild leader has a rather eccentric temperament, so I'd like to apologize on his behalf." Cogo chimed in. "He doesn't seem like a bad person either, so it's no big deal." Song-un thought to himself, as long as they aren't a villain, even if they lack politeness, he doesn't bother holding a grudge. Seeing him see right through an S-rank hunter who leads a top guild while maintaining such a composed composure, he grew even more curious about the fierce entity he had been chatting with all this time. "Seoju Usket Seongyang. Do you have any more questions?" Suddenly granted a special privilege, Song-un didn't stand on ceremony either. Usually, I notice the painting keeps its eyes tightly shut. When the painting has its eyes closed like that, can you still see us? Have you been secretly observing us from inside the painting all this time? He still couldn't drop his suspicions regarding Cogo. What is his true objective behind maintaining these conversations with humans, anyway? The phrasing he used to ask Cogo didn't quite sit well with him. Rather than calling it observing, it's more like peeking out the window because the scenery outside keeps moving. In short, this painting only opens its eyes when I intend to communicate with the outside world. I verified that myself using a broken mirror piece back when I was still at that burned-down school. Otherwise, the painting's eyes remain shut, and I can take my time watching safely from the inside. But these details remained solely in Cogo's thoughts instead of being revealed to the person in front of him. Since all of you are inside the picture frame, I have no choice but to sit back and watch. Moving paintings really are fascinating, I must admit. Song Yuan's entire body was covered in a layer of cold sweat. So that's how it is? He realized a grim truth. To him, the painting wasn't himself. It was the humans in the outside world. Cogo, your straightforward tone keeps catching me off guard time and time again. The other party's reminder didn't make Cogo uncomfortable. "I'm just trying to be polite." Song-un cried out in astonishment. "Polite?" Cogo asked back. Shouldn't a human being behave politely? It seemed his thought process was quite different from what Song-un had envisioned. Wasn't this conversation enjoyable? Finally, the second day of investigating Cogo's portrait came to an end. It was now 9 a.m. Song-un kicked the door open, barged straight into Baisa Bayal's office, and shouted at the top of his lungs, "Guild leader." He saw him leisurely enjoying a cup of fine tea. "That thing is extremely dangerous." His tone was dead serious. Yet Baisa Bayal merely turned his head in an unhurried manner with a blindingly bright smile. And just where is it dangerous, my boy? Yu Song uncarried his briefcase and rushed in, speaking urgently about the paint. His voice trembled with a mixture of rage and confusion. Meanwhile, Bisa Bayal calmly raised his teacup, looking as if none of it had anything to do with him. It's completely different from any monster we've ever encountered before. Those things smother people to death with kindness. Yu Song-un recalled the experience and asserted firmly. Most importantly, he actually considers himself human. But right after, he furrowed his brows, his eyes showing clear signs of doubt and hesitation. Though I'm not sure if he genuinely believes that, or if he just wants to believe it. Speaking up to this point, a vague sense of dread swelled inside Yu Song-yuen's heart. He let out a soft exclamation. Usually, these cases seem harmless on the surface, but if something goes wrong, the consequences are beyond imagining. The more he spoke, the paler his face became, his voice trembling as he failed to hide his unease. That painting also has a concept of right and wrong, and he judges others according to his own standards. I can't imagine how he would react if he met a bad person. Finishing his sentence, Yu Song-yuen's face darkened, and he cast a suspicious glance at Bisa Bayal, who was smiling serenely and softly humming a tune. You plan to send it to the Hunters Association as research material. He smirked, tossing out a mocking response. Like I've got time for that. Hearing that, the young man could only sigh helplessly, giving a bitter smile as he exclaimed, I knew you'd say that. After that, Bisa Bayal rested his chin on his hand, praising him cheerfully. The more I hear, the more I feel like you're doing a great job. Please keep chatting with COGO. Get close to him and introduce me to him, too. He kept blabbering endlessly, despite Yu Song-yuen's clear distaste. It'd be a pain if all that effort went to waste by being ignored. So make sure to find out what COGO likes, too. He gave a bitter smile and took a step back, consciously steering clear of his overwhelming positive energy before replying. That's way too personal, but I got it. It's my job anyway, so I have to do it, right? You don't need to remind me. With that, Bisa Bayal laughed heartily and wondered aloud. Why is every single one of my employees so nonchalant? Yu Song-un replied with helpless exasperation. Because you only recruit people like that, that's why. Saying that, he recalled the man's mysterious, inviting expression from the beginning, secretly remarking to himself. The guild leader's collecting addiction didn't just stop at objects. Every single employee at Collectors was personally trained and recruited by the chairman himself through sheer persistence. Afterward, Yu Song unknitted his brows, his gaze drifting into the distance while silently acknowledging. No matter how low a hunter's rank was, he never picked anyone carelessly. Just standing next to him exerted immense pressure on employees with strong willpower, cluttering their minds. Remembering the overwhelming pressure Bisa Bayal used to release that weighed heavily on everyone, he thought to himself, well, all I know is that its soul level is extraordinarily exceptional. Snapping out of his random train of thought, Yu Song-un immediately made a stern commitment. I will report to you periodically, but there are no similar entities to compare him against. That's why it's hard to determine his true nature after just a day or two. Receiving no satisfactory response, he felt thoroughly exasperated. That guy Bisa Bayal. Not long after, Bisa Bayal stroked his chin, a chilly aura radiating around him as he agreed. All right, you may take your leave. The more he looked at him, the more uneasy he felt, thinking to himself, is he planning to destroy the earth, or what? And so, the third day of exploring COGO's portrait began. Yu Song-un sat upright in front of COGO's portrait, asking in confusion, Don't you feel lonely? It responded coldly and emotionlessly, I don't feel that way. He forced a professional smile, hesitating before saying, My apologies if that question was a bit impolite. Finishing his sentence, Yu Song-un looked up slightly, explaining in a gentle voice, Only the staff in charge of managing the artworks drop by this place, so I figured stepping out of the painting every now and then was your way of soothing that loneliness. That was just my wild guess. Hearing that, COGO's portrait replied nonchalantly, I prefer places without people, so this is just right for me. The somewhat cold answer made Yu Song-un feel uneasy, probing awkwardly. Does chatting make you uncomfortable? It spoke up, its lifeless voice opening up. Not really. It's just that I've spent too much of my life talking, so I always envisioned a future where I wouldn't have to constantly open my mouth. Inside the portrait frame, Cogo was a tangled mess. Layers of emotions silently swelling up and dragging him back to distant memories. Cold walls where one didn't need to speak too much, or shallow connections free of excessive obligations. Then there were those days steeped in crisis, yet requiring no overthinking. Cogo's soul quietly drifted back to that old sanctuary of peace. Sitting under a familiar tree, he let out a soft sigh. I've always wished for a place like that. This place happens to fit that wish of mine quite well. Hearing that, Yu Song-un was astonished, his brows furrowing in suspicion. Were you a human in the past? It answered without hesitation. That's right. Seeing this, Yu Song-un awkwardly raised a hand, waving it in embarrassment as he clarified. Right, I mean, you used to be an ordinary human who didn't live inside a painting. Behind the picture frame, Cogo remained nonchalant, his lifeless eyes confirming. That's right. Afterward, Yu Song-un swiftly analyzed. Humanoid monsters were divided into two categories. Meanwhile, he didn't forget to reply, I see. Finishing his sentence, Yu Song-un inadvertently fell into a daze, images of mystical creatures popping up in his head, those born as monsters that gradually evolved to take on human form. Next, he thoughtfully recalled an ancient theory regarding the type that originally started out as human, but at a certain point returned to their roots and became monsters. Yu Song-un sat silently, observing seriously before making a judgment. Does Cogo belong to the second category? Is that why he insists on regarding himself as human? But then he immediately refuted his own point of view. If so, that's even stranger. Monsters that retain memories of their time as humans are usually easily driven by negative emotions. Yu Song-un stared thoughtfully at Cogo's portrait on the wall, lost in reflection. Yet this guy gave off a feeling that was far too calm. In his mind, he envisioned its resentment, secretly speculating. This isn't the peace of happiness. It feels more like standing at someone's funeral. Yu Song-un just sat there quietly, facing Cogo's portrait in a dreamlike haze, as if the entity was mourning a death. After a moment of contemplation, he quickly spoke up. Then don't you feel bored, sir? It still answered with casual indifference, occasionally. Hearing that, Yu Song-un continued to press. How do you entertain yourself? It remained steady, its voice low and quiet. Usually I have a meal. The brief yet information-packed answer left Yu Song-un frozen in shock. Have a meal. A flurry of question marks rose in his heart. A painting can actually eat? Despite his bewildered look, it offered an explanation. I enjoy eating and drinking. This statement sent Yu Song-un into an even deeper state of confusion. Paintings really do eat. As his thoughts reached this point, he immediately covered his mouth, his eyes sharply dissecting the situation. He doesn't look like someone who enjoys eating and drinking at all. Does he? With a face like that, it seems like nothing could ever move him. Suddenly realizing a critical detail, he thought in horror. Don't tell me the cooking ingredients are actual human beings. To satisfy your curiosity, Yu Song-un quietly gave a heads up. It might be a bit rude to ask, but how do you eat your meals, Cogo? But the portrait innocently replied, I cook for myself. I just pick whatever I want to eat. Then he started imagining the process while narrating. Then I gather the right ingredients to prep them, use the appropriate tools to cook it up, and that's it. As he finished speaking, Cogo fondly recalled yesterday's delicious meat meal. Even though he had turned into a lifeless portrait, he continued to affirm and exclaim, because I'm a normal human being. That's a really weird question to ask. Hearing that, Yu Song-un's face darkened as he choked on his words, thinking to himself, does he realize that explaining it like that only makes him look less human? Suddenly, Cogo chuckled softly and mused, I get it now. He looked back while reflecting to himself on the rules of the painting, which consisted of 3 simple rules. It was a place where everything around was surreal, and the only boundary allowing interaction with the outside world was the picture frame itself. He vaguely realized, "Are you curious about what I could do inside this painting?" Then, Cogio turned his head to look off into the distance and agreed, "Me too." Thinking that, he softly spoke up, "I'm also curious about what can and cannot be done inside this painting." From afar, a brushbox appeared, and it slowly painted a familiar tree into the scenery inside the portrait. As if realizing something, Cogio's portrait secretly pondered, "Then please help me test out something I'm curious about, Mr. Yu Song-an." Ending his train of thought, he spoke in a deep, warm voice. "There are also a few things I can only enjoy precisely because I'm inside this painting." Yu Song-an asked back skeptically, "What do you mean by that?" The portrait calmly replied, "I need a little help." Then Cogio's portrait nonchalantly continued, "But you can bring me some joy." Hearing that, Yu Song-un forced a smile with a darkened expression and said, "What kind of joy are you talking about?" It keenly offered a suggestion. "Why don't you draw an apple on this painting?" Yu Song-un felt helpless, cold sweat pouring down as he asked in suspicion, "On this exact painting?" Cogio's portrait firmly confirmed, "That's right. It shouldn't be too hard, right?" Then Yu Song-un immediately turned around and bent down slightly to open his suitcase. He held up his brush while approaching the painting, quietly complaining to himself. Touching a work of art like this really wasn't pleasant at all. But Cogio leaned out of the frame and asked in surprise, "Do you always carry art supplies with you?" Yu Song-un explained while painting on the portrait, "I always try to carry various backup items, since you never know what might happen in an exhibition like this." Finishing his words, he drew a personal lesson, saying one should prepare for multiple scenarios makes it safer for oneself. After that, Yu Song-un secretly proved to himself that the current situation was the clearest evidence. Dazed, with a sharp gaze, he speculated, "What would have happened if I hadn't brought any painting supplies?" An apple was painted by Yu Song-un right beside Cogio's portrait. The portrait exclaimed with delight, "The apple doesn't look very appetizing." Meanwhile, Yu Song-un tilted his head in confusion, examining it closely. Despite that attentive look, Cogio's portrait reached out and grabbed the apple, saying thanks. That scene made him instinctively freeze. Cogio's portrait took a soft bite of the apple to enjoy. This forced him to reset his perception of reality. Looking at the bitten apple, Yu Song-un was stunned and panicked. He actually ate it. He froze and stepped back, his mind filled with doubt. He ate the apple one just drew. Yu Song-un stammered in fear, cold sweat breaking out uncontrollably. Yu Song-un was in shock, unable to believe what was happening right before his eyes, marveling to himself that he had never seen anything like this before. On the opposite side, Gio's portrait calmly enjoyed the sweetness of the apple and commented, "This is really delicious. See, it's so ripe and has such a pleasant aroma." Yu Song-yuan's worldview began to crumble. He vaguely recalled and thought to himself, "I clearly used cheap paint to draw it just now. How could a painting have actual taste and smell?" Seeing his reaction, Gio's portrait glanced over nonchalantly and said, "I'm a normal human being living inside a painting. Following that logic, even in here, I can still do many extraordinary things." After finishing it, he held up the core, shook it, and continued the conversation. "On days I don't feel like cooking, I'll just draw a complete meal like this and eat it." Hearing that, Yu Song-yuan's heart instantly tightened. Suffocating, he retorted, "How could a normal person do something like that?" Seeing that expression, he looked into the distance with a deep, cold sadness and spoke in a chilly voice. "Is it really that strange?" He agreed without hesitation, "Yes, it is." Hearing that, Gio's portrait accepted it right away. "I see." He softened his voice and said gratefully, "Then I shall return the favor for drawing me that apple." Yu Song-un tilted his head slightly, asking in disbelief, "Return the favor?" His mind was exhausted and confused. What was he planning to do this time? Without hesitation, Cogio decisively rolled up his sleeves and exclaimed, "Yu Song-un is really soft-hearted. Even when a portrait on the wall suddenly tells him to draw an apple, he actually follows through." He held the brush seriously while recalling the difficulties of the early days. "After opening my eyes inside the painting, I tried many things, and I even tried drawing gemstones. Geo pleasantly recalled the lonely days spent beside the canvas. I turned those gemstones into paint and tried using them to draw. The vibrant colors took him back to the past. But those painted strokes, they seemed almost alive. Geo unleashed his creativity and excitedly shared. Inside this portrait, where I can even create warm corpses, nothing seems impossible for me. That's why I was curious about what would happen if it connected with the reality outside the frame. Afterward, Geo froze as he stared at the thing in front of him, looking off into the distance with silent admiration. Sure enough, looking at the black panel that appeared before him, Geo felt disappointed. It wasn't entirely without limits. Suddenly, in the exchange slot, the red gem he had drawn began to appear. Soon enough, that gemstone slowly separated itself from the paint. Yu Song-un reached out his hand, stunned beyond words. Geo's portrait said in a soft voice, "This is a small token of my gratitude." Yu Song-un held the precious gem in a daze. This is a strange kind of gemstone with a crystalline structure. He created this just by drawing. In absolute confusion, he still asked awkwardly, "What kind of gemstone is this?" The gaze of Geo's portrait turned sad. "I'm not sure, but it must have been deep underground once, somewhere so hot it could burn everything to ashes." He continued imagining the roaring flames and added, "It was so hot there that it could coexist with the heart of this planet, so perhaps it became like a friend to me and kept that heat inside." Witnessing such strange things today made Yu Song-yuen's head spin. His mind raced wildly. "There's only one thing I know for certain," Yu Song-un affirmed with absolute confidence. "This painting is not a monster." This also marked the completion of his third day exploring Geo's paint. Yu Song-un carefully looked at the gleaming gem in front of him and pondered. The root? Right after that, he wanted to make his report. With a firm and serious gaze, Yu Song-un stated, "Those are my observation results so far." Meanwhile, he also found the answer for himself. The root, a transcendent existence governing the balance of every universe and dimension, while also establishing the rules. It was a form of system and the god of all gods. The dungeons that submerged Earth 30 years ago were stories of newly born dimensions stemming from the veins of the root, and the monsters in the dungeons appeared in the exact same manner. That was what the gardeners knew. Ending his train of thought, Yu Song-un lowered his head slightly, yet his tone remained resolute as he declared, "Monsters are born from dungeons. The children of the root are born from the root," he firmly concluded. "The two are completely different in both origin and nature. Yet Geo doesn't resemble any of them." Then, Yu Song-un spoke with a bit of hesitation. "Furthermore, Geo has created existences that are different from himself." A small, colorful bird hopped around before landing gently on Geo's broad shoulder. As time flew by, it was now the 6th day of exploring Geo's paint. Yu Song-un was still just as surprised as he was on the first day. Noticing his surprise, Geo's portrait introduced them in a soft voice. "They're my new family. I'm having fun, so I'm planning to make a few more." The white birds radiated a strange sense of peace, but it was precisely that which expanded Yu Song-yuen's perspective on life. They're flying around inside the painting. He raised his curious eyes and asked softly, "Did you create them yourself? There's so many. Did you draw all of them?" Geo immediately replied candidly, "Yeah, about 100 of them. They're super chatty. I can't even imagine how noisy they'd be if they actually had vocal cords." Then he shared, "They gathered together to form a pond." Seeing those little birds seemed to lift Geo's mood. He said proudly, "And they really love stuffing things into their bodies to decorate themselves. Each bird has a very distinct taste, so watching them is quite fun." Hearing that, Yu Song-un grew even more bewildered, but he quickly regained his composure and spoke gently. "The way you talk about them, you don't view them as mere paintings, but rather as if they are truly alive. Do these birds actually have souls?" Meanwhile, Yu Song-yuen's heart was wavering violently in amazement. This is far beyond what any monster could ever do. Seeing the expectant look on Yu Song-yuen's face, Geo's portrait replied quietly, "I'm not sure either." Hearing that, he analyzed the situation himself, thinking secretly, The children of the root have no ego, so they can't even have a conversation like this. This time, Yu Song-un became more serious, his face darkening as he voiced his inner assumption. Geo, you are definitely a painting, but at the same time, you are also human, and an existence capable of affecting reality. Yu Song-un was certain about that. Furthermore, I don't feel any divinity from you, so the chance of you being a god is even lower. Then, he frowned and looked up with determination. However, through your drawings, you can create fate, pasts, and memories. So, can you create actual real humans? Finishing his words, Yu Song-un fell into deep thought again. If he did all that by himself, then this... Before he could guess any further, Geo's portrait spoke in a deep, melancholic voice. It might be possible, or it might not, but I don't even want to try that. Expressing Geo's true feelings, it said, creating human beings just feels uneasy somehow. That's something far too special, and I'm really not that special. Hearing that, Yu Song-un stood frozen in place, his throat dry and tight. Geo's portrait reminded him sorrowfully, "Please don't think of me as someone too special. It's best not to think that way." Those words from the bottom of his heart stirred Yu Song-un slightly, yet he stood firm solemnly. He replied softly, "I'll be careful." After a moment of silence, Yu Song-un helplessly tilted his head and questioned, "Are you really not planning to hand it over to the association?" Seeing Bisa Bayal sitting quietly with a casual smile made him try even harder to explain. "What I have right now is just the story of the portrait. What exact technique does it use? How high is its soul level? Or what role does Geo play in the root? I don't have answers to any of those." Hearing that, he opened his sharp eyes without answering. Seeing this, Yu Song-un pointed out with even greater certainty, "If this is an unknown existence whose impact on humanity is unclear, there is no better place than the association to analyze Geo's portrait." He emphasized firmly, "It's what's best for humanity." Hearing that, Bisa Bayal's expression shifted slightly. He chuckled coldly and called out in a low voice, "Director Yu." Bisa Bayal stood up, leaning his hands on the desk skeptically. "Have you forgotten the tasks I gave you when I hired you?" Yu Song-un immediately retorted in indignation. "I'm not the type of person who wants those things." That answer made him burst into a frenzy, pointing his finger to affirm, "I don't need weapons. Why want his art?" Then Bisa Bayal's face turned cold as he said sharply, "That's the reason I founded this guild, this company." Finishing his sentence, he turned around, raising a hand toward the sky dreamily. "Maybe I have a bit of pride as an artist, but as a hunter, I don't have a shred of pride at all." Suddenly, Bisa Bayal called out softly, "Hey, Yu Song-un." Then, he mysteriously put both hands behind his back and explained, "No collector expects a master's artwork to ward off petty evil spirits or bring them pleasant dreams." Bisa Bayal replayed the previous reports and said, "I'm simply curious about the story hidden inside a painting." Then he emphasized firmly, "And I just want to personally preserve that story in its entirety." Hearing those crazy words, Yu Song-un's eyes grew dazed and shaken. At the same time, Bisa Bayal also looked at him directly with a sharp, cold gaze. He let out a sinister laugh and voiced his frustration. "Do you get it now? We can't stop it." Meanwhile, in Yu Song-un's mind, Geo's lonely portrait in the corner of that room slowly appeared. With sharp eyes combined with his own experience through countless major events, the leader of the Collector Guild, Bisa Bayal, easily made his assessment. That painting might be a natural disaster, but we can communicate with it, and luckily, it holds goodwill toward us. Right now, in the world inside Geo's portrait, he was slowly kneading the delicious, fragrant dough with care, completely unaware that he was being marveled at by the other party. This really, truly is an extraordinary stroke of luck. It should be called an unreasonable miracle. Under the gentle sunlight, just bright enough to pierce through the cracks of the cozy house, Geo continued to immerse himself in his hobby alongside the peaceful silence. At the moment when the honey bird curiously tilted its head all the way up to look at him, Bisa Bayal entered a state of declaration, stating in a firm tone, "Whatever its true nature may be, We can't be foolish enough to lose this miracle. After listening to his entire presentation delivered in a monotone voice, sheer horror mixed with astonishment was plainly visible on Song Yuan's face. So that's why you bought Geo. Responding to him with a nonchalant tone from Baisa Bayal, even though he already appeared at the auction, he'll eventually be exposed to the whole world anyway. Possessing a fast-processing mind, he quickly understood and followed up immediately. You mean you acted first because you were afraid a disaster might happen during that process? Standing against the light streaming in from the outside, he was filled with pride as he dropped each word. I see a lot of things, you know. Right then, the little honeybird inside the painting out of curiosity completely wrapped itself around the glass containing the orange liquid. Meanwhile, Baisa Bayal directly confirmed to Song Un with his gaze. So if he believes he's human, we can just treat him as such. Meanwhile, Geo, who had just prepared a complete table setting, couldn't help but feel speechless seeing the orange juice completely sucked dry by the honeybird. What was special was that after enjoying its fill, it successfully transformed into a brilliant golden glow, completely different from its previous blue version. At the same time, back in the office belonging to the Collector Guild, Song Un hesitated for a long while before finally bringing up the issue. He's on a completely different level, isn't he? Baisa Bayal's finger, wearing a dazzling gold ring, gestured decisively. Don't be so narrow-minded as a gardener. Think bigger, will you? Facing his stern expression, he gently uttered his assessment based on the gathered information. Geo is a good person, even very kind. Recalling the moment, he smiled brightly, trying to communicate with him through the painting, even without having had a conversation yet. Baisa Bayal was clear about one thing. He doesn't like being disturbed, but he doesn't hate it either. If someone doesn't get upset over things that annoy them, just how kind must that person be? He behaves very politely, respecting others while being so tolerant that he doesn't force any rules on them. On top of that, he's even afraid of hurting someone. After a moment of contemplation, although he had personally interacted with Geo, Song Un was still somewhat taken aback. You're saying he's afraid of hurting others? At most, that feeling wouldn't even compare to a human stepping on an ant. Under the night sky of a city glowing with bright lights, Baisa Bayal emphasized the assessment he had just mentioned once more. Didn't I tell you he's very kind? His eyebrows raised. You have good reasons to doubt him. You haven't even had a proper conversation with him once. So how do you know so much? It's as if you were just waiting for this. Baisa Bayal instantly showed off his arrogance with his S-rank hunter certification. You need this much ability to be a guild leader. Just one look into his eyes, and you should be able to grasp this much. Following that, he didn't forget to utter a word of warning. Do you understand? Don't go satisfying your own curiosity about his inner thoughts and end up bringing disaster upon yourself. And without waiting for the other to say another word, he nonchalantly issued the command. Just become someone Geo enjoys chatting with. Without stopping there, Baisa Bayal, with a constant smile on his lips, added to that instruction, and then occasionally take him out to play. His eyebrows furrowed tighter than ever. Song Un directly pushed the question back. Are you serious? Without giving any specific answer, the response he got was just a shrug and a wave of the hand from him. Clearly understanding the other's answer, he bowed decisively after a slight hesitation before continuing. All my worrying as an inspector for Collector was in vain. The annoyance on his face vanished, replaced by the corners of his lips curving up at a 45-degree angle. I'll trust you, guild leader. I trust your judgment of people. Based on their long-time experience working together, Song Un had long known what Baisa Bayal possessed. Eyes that could see things normal humans couldn't. Not letting the conversation drag on any longer, he concluded directly with a mixture of cheerfulness and seriousness in his voice. Provide the best service Collector can offer to Geo. After a work session and discussion with his superior, Song Un was finally able to leave the building belonging to the Collector Guild, slowly stepping forward. The corners of his lips couldn't help but hold a cheerful smile. Thank goodness, an existence of the root is so easy to communicate with. I really don't want to hand him over to the association at all. His time working all this was enough for Song Un to see through the dark corners of the current state of affairs. Those experiments they did over there were no different from torture. Under the celestial light continuously spreading across the vast space, Yu Song-un stepped onto the neatly paved brick ground, being a gardener himself. To explain it more clearly, an existence of the root is referred to as a garden, and it chooses someone to take care of it. The person who becomes that gardener will dedicate their full devotion to that garden. Since managing a garden also affects the difficulty of various dungeons, gardeners truly love their gardens and take great pride in them. And toward those existences of the root that form the foundation for the gardens, they cannot help but feel curiosity and deep affection. At the moment he let himself sink into his own world, a certain scene suddenly caught Song Yuan's eye, drawing his attention. Standing in front of an open red stall, he marveled in his mind. Fish cake carts are really rare these days. Recalling his recent conversation with Co. Song-un pondered silently. He really likes eating. The entire space settled down, as if time was frozen under the icy night sky. Closing the distance to the fish cake stall, radiating continuous warmth, Song-un couldn't help but reconsider what Bisa Bayal had affirmed. Just as the guild leader said, if Geo truly thinks he's human, and his current natural respect and care stem from that misunderstanding, then I should help him maintain this misunderstanding for as long as possible. And then, not long after, Song-un was present at the display area with steaming hot food in hand. May I ask how old you are this year? Standing behind his own portrait, Geo didn't intend to hide it as he answered truthfully, I'm 29. Obviously, that confession left Song-un, an uncle who had just turned 33, unable to react in time. It took a while for the shock to finally register on his face. This is completely unexpected. Hesitating for a moment, he spoke up, You're really young. Seeing through his true thoughts, he blurted out, I often get told I look old for my age, but reacting like that hurts my feelings. Successfully startling Song-un, he quickly defended himself. No, that's not what I meant. Realizing the more he spoke, the worse it sounded, Song-un continued with a forced smile as a clutter of thoughts raced through his mind. He was an existence recognized by Bisa Bayal as something humanity couldn't stop. But unexpectedly, he wasn't even 30, and maybe 29 was just another misconception of his. After coming back to his senses, he resumed the topic in a startled tone. I didn't think you'd be younger than me. Then Geo responded with a question. Now I'm curious about your age. Yu Song-un, can you tell me? He admitted without hesitation. I'm 33 years old. He replied immediately. You look younger than your age. Thus, he successfully earned a bright smile from the beauty. Getting complimented on looking young by an existence of the root was indeed quite interesting. Then, in the next second, he directly made a suggestion. If you're older, just talk to me comfortably. He couldn't help but let out a sound. Really? That'd be great. Geo replied, right away in a casual tone. It's not like I ever told you to use honorifics anyway. After a moment of dialogue, Song-un finally raised the fish cake in his hand toward him. Then I'll talk comfortably from now on. Here, this is for you. His mind drifted to a topic. When will be the best time to take Geo outside? As time flew by, it wasn't long before Song-un reached his 17th day of exploring Geo's painting. If we consider a person as the root, then what we call a garden is like a part of that person, like blood vessels, fingernails, a heart, or eyes. Despite being an introvert, his instinct to communicate with his own kind helped Geo not mind the hassle of conversing across a picture frame. Those stories are really interesting. Now you're completely comfortable with me, but I find you just as interesting. Then he didn't forget to add a few words about his own experience. Even if chosen, maintaining a garden is still so exhausting that people die doing it. It's a job that's hard to be relaxed about in every sense. After listening to every single word coming out of Song Yuan's mouth, Geo directly raised a reasonable question. Is becoming a gardener something you're forced to do? Like a close friend, he didn't mind the trouble of explaining clearly. It's not something you can choose as you wish. So even though I'm working as an inspector now, I still can't give up my status as a gardener. In the next second, Song-un handed the item he had just searched for in his pocket toward the portrait. Here's the seed you asked for last time. Thus, Geo immediately extended his fair hands to receive it. Thanks. Having just witnessed a scene shocking enough to stun anyone's mind, naturally, even he couldn't escape feeling astonished. This is the first time I've seen just hands reaching out like this. As for him, right after receiving the item from the other party, he instinctively fell into deep thought before dropping a word of concern. Isn't it exhausting? Instead of standing with arms crossed against the wall a bit longer, Song-un walked toward the armchair, placed opposite Seo Gio's portrait. A little bit, but it's worth it after all. When I close my eyes, I see a towering snow-capped mountain and glaciers. That grandeur is captivating. Having a garden of one's own is truly wonderful. After hearing his answer clearly, he instinctively turned his head back decisively. His line of sight was the warm wooden house and the flock of waterfowl spreading their wings to fly freely in the forest. I get it. Then, in the next second, Seo Gio's long, slender fingers stroked the little honeybird in his hand back and forth. I feel the same way. Receiving an affirmative answer from the other party, Song-un let out a long sigh with a smirk on his lips. In the next moment, his soft phoenix eyes held a contemplative look, as if preparing to make a decision. After all, Song-un officially extended an invitation. Do you want to go outside? If you want, I can show you around. Obviously, that offer sent Seo Gio into a moment of daze before he confirmed, go sightseeing? At the moment Seo Gio blurted out that question, Song-un snapped out of making such a sudden invitation. Extending an offer to an existence of the route couldn't be taken lightly. We still haven't determined Gio's true identity, so it's unclear what he would do to reality. But remembering the madness in Bisa Bayal's eyes and his firm declaration, we can't stop it, Song-un knew one thing clearly. The wisest move was to find out beforehand. Quickly regaining his professional composure, he offered a reassuring tone in the next second. It seems you don't know much about the situation outside, do you? You just need to show up in person, and I'll lead the way. At that moment, Seo Gio behind the painting stroked his chin and fell into deep thought. So that time has come? The time to return to society. He didn't forget to respond to him. You're right, Mr. Yu Song-un. Not keeping him waiting for too long, he cut straight to the question. When would be reasonable? After their 17 conversation ended, he switched to talking with the honeybird. Your dad is thinking. Using a shovel, he drew himself to dig the dirt. The steady sound echoed throughout the vast space. People outside seemed to be afraid of Dad. Based on the information from Song-un, it's probably because when Dad goes out, the painting appears in reality, creating a gap in human perception. I must look scary and peculiar to them. Even though most of the staff look at me and talk to me, they feel somewhat distant, as if dealing with something unknown, like a resolution mismatch. At this point, the little honeybird tilted its body and chirped. Seeming to understand what it wanted to say, Seo Gio replied naturally, Dad is a bit flustered, but it's not too uncomfortable, so don't worry. I already made a promise to go out with Mr. Yu Song-un, so I want to thoroughly fix that resolution mismatch somehow. Standing before a neatly planned yard titled, My Vegetable Garden, Seo Gio let out a refreshing breath. This attempt was successful too. Grandma used to say you have to work if you want to eat. The cheerful image of his grandma, giving 2 thumbs up, appeared alongside the honeybird's inquisitive chirp. Facing the little bird bowing almost 180 degrees, Seo Gio announced calmly, but you just need to be cute to fulfill your mission. You're worrying over nothing. After sharing that moment of warmth, he finally moved on to an equally important matter. It's a bit unreasonable for you to evolve to the point of speaking, but since you have a different color from the rest of the waterfowl and your body is warm too, maybe Dad should give you a name. Taking the sun hat off his head, Seo Gio had more than enough patience to ask for its opinion. Do you like it? Great. Then the honeybird froze with a blank face, just 2 eyes and a tiny beak at his next sentence. Then baby. An awkward silence instantly covered them. In the moment Seo Gio had to stay silent himself, he sincerely apologized next. Dad thinks that name isn't great either. My mouth utters nonsense sometimes. He couldn't help but marvel in his mind. It's the first time I've seen it freeze like that. After a moment of high-speed brain work, he hesitated slightly while offering another name for the little one in his hand, along with the meaning behind it. How about honey? Since you have such a sweet color. In the next moment, the little one chirped a cute "choo-sew" in joy, completely different from its dazed face a minute ago, earning an honest and grateful response from Cogio. I didn't expect you not to hate this name. You're really tolerant. After stepping inside the warm wooden house, he laid out a clear plan. So Dad will finish the remaining landscape paintings and then enjoy a sweet, deep sleep afterward. Not letting time pass in vain, Cogio dipped his brush onto his specialized canvas board, then directly immersed himself in a secluded space the moment he raised his weapon to execute techniques on the stretched paper. Relying on his talent, each stroke was painted so vividly that the ocean waves seemed to surge fiercely in real life. Right at this moment, the system screen displayed a loading circle under the text, searching for corresponding dimension. From scenes of human-like demons covered in uncanny flames, to other scenes continuously revolving. After processing, when the system indicated it had found the corresponding dimension in the peaceful, fully equipped space, Gio's newly finished painting of the ocean burst into a sacred light. He slept uncomfortably on his soft bed. At this moment, the warm sunlight poured all over the lake area where the blue waterfowl were relaxing. After indulging in a satisfying sleep, Cogio's serene dark eyes slowly fluttered open. But before he could fully wake up, he was startled by the system screen displaying, "Please check new notifications." Sitting up sluggishly, he uttered each word sluggishly. "What is this? Why is this the first thing I see as soon as I open my eyes?" Following the system's prompt, the painting Cogio finished last night had unknowingly become an exhibit named Breathing Ocean. Not stopping there, various notification boards surrounding him were enough to make him mutter, "Breathing Ocean, Animal Kingdom, Empty City." Possessing a quick mind, he nodded as thoughts flashed past. "I roughly get it. The system named the landscape paintings I finished yesterday." Observing words like accessible and synchronizable beneath Breathing Ocean, he muttered in astonishment. "Exploring dimensions by drawing landscapes? I wonder if this is really okay for a human." Right when Cogio fell into doubt, Honey finally landed on his shoulder. Feeling so refreshed that his whole body radiated a dazzling light, Cogio decisively brushed it off. "Well, as long as it's fun, it should be fine." Stroking its chin, he speculated, "Maybe the system knows my naming skills are terrible, so it snatched the chance to title my works away." In the next second, he couldn't help but question the confusing content. But what does sync adapter mean here? A detailed system pop-up immediately provided the answer about sync adapters, enough to make Cogio nod. "You're pretty sensible. Go on and tell me." As a studious person with free time, Cogio didn't mind the trouble and immersed himself in the text before his eyes. Let's see a convenient method to understand unfamiliar dimensions. Among existing entities in the display dimension, the target corresponding to Gio will be designated as the sync adapter. With the sync adapter's consent, by borrowing their body and soul, one can easily understand and travel through that dimension. Observing the two portraits of Giovanni and AIO without specific features yet, he directly questioned, "Does anyone named Gio qualify?" Right after asking, Cogio fell into contemplation since he received no response from the system. In the next moment, he refuted himself in a firm tone. "No, if that were the case, why bother calling it a sync adapter? There must be other important conditions to be selected." Leaning back slightly, his finger instinctively rubbed his chin in thought. "Maybe it's the result of a sync test or adaptability with me." He exclaimed aloud, "Interesting, looks like I won't have to worry about being bored in this life." Turning back to his own painting, a piece titled Empty City caught Gio's eye. Observing the text, corresponding dimension does not exist, and the question, "Would you like to register?" below it, he quickly came to a conclusion. Does this mean I just created a new dimension? Showing no change in expression, he maintained his composure as he blurted out, "Sounds like my life is about to get a whole lot brighter." Under the soft sunlight coming through the window, Cogio poured his heart out to the little one on his shoulder. "Life really is wondrous. Honey, right? If I don't enjoy this right now, I wouldn't be human anymore." Seeing that it didn't even chirp, he continued in a reassuring tone, "I don't know which of my words made you go quiet like that, but trust me, honey, life is a storm." After Cogio finished his sentence, the system screen updated with a tip about a new notification, directing a faint gaze toward the anomaly nearby regarding the resolution issue. He felt a bit proud as he stated with a calm face, "Look at this. The path I took is the correct answer." The electronic screen text provided the solution to the resolution issue. Utilize Geo. Though still unclear, he went straight ahead and tapped on the name Giovanni. That alone was reason enough to enjoy it. With just a soft touch, the bedroom space around CO Geo suddenly transformed into a workspace filled with countless distinct bottles and jars. Unsurprised by this shift, he merely sighed in his mind. What kind of delivery service is so lacking in finesse? Honey isn't even here. He couldn't help asking as he looked around. Where is this? The system popped up an answer. This is breathing ocean in Giovanni's mental world. That was enough to satisfy CO Geo. At least you're sensible sometimes. Looking at the surgical tools simulated nearby, he made a preliminary assessment. Mental world looks like an old hospital. As CO Geo put on his familiar black cloak, a graceful figure with long hair belonging to Giovanni suddenly appeared. The moment he turned his head toward the source of the noise, every feature on Giovanni's face synced with CO Geo's. As for Geo at that moment, he was slightly surprised and dazed for a brief second. To maintain proper etiquette, CO Geo stood up and nodded to him in the next second. "Hello." He thought to himself, a face identical to mine, showing no discomfort toward Geo's sudden presence. Giovanni even raised the corners of his lips into a gentle curve. As the high priest of the sun god, every action and word he uttered carried a warmth and brilliance no different from morning sunlight. "Nice to meet you. I am Giovanni of the Batlon family." CO Geo quickly introduced his name out of courtesy. "I'm CO Geo." He took the opportunity to glance over him. So this person is the sync adapter. Thinking this, CO Geo grew even more curious. "You look a lot like me. If I were a foreigner, I'd probably look like this too." Giovanni smiled, making that romantic face even brighter. "I reckon we share many other similarities as well." Seeing that, CO Geo shook his head vigorously, not daring to look straight anymore. "I can't smile as gently as you do. I've never been good at smiling, so people often misunderstand me. They say I must have lost someone close to me in a tragedy, or that I used to do some very dangerous job in the past. Meanwhile, I just live and think about what to eat for my next meal." The lunch bell at school really was wonderful. Hearing that, Giovanni smiled even brighter. "That is indeed a lovely and honest concern. Just like my students back in the day. From now on, you'll be able to smile just like me." CO Geo's face looked as if he had just encountered something horrific. "Just like you." CO Geo was rendered somewhat speechless. "If I choose to sync, can I do that too?" After a moment of silence, he spoke up. "Of course I'll still ask for your proper permission, but I understand that means taking away both your body and soul. Aren't you afraid or resentful of me? Just to enjoy a new dimension, I'm going to steal everything from you." Facing these words, Giovanni remained as calm as ever. "This isn't stealing. I was already dead from the start. My soul has returned to the sun's side, and my body has turned to dust, buried beneath the earth." His jade green eyes suddenly flashed with a faint trace of sadness, though it probably didn't turn to dust or get buried, because all the land there was swallowed by seawater. These words left CO Geo looking blank. He finally managed to filter out the main point from those flowery words. "Submerged? You mean your homeland?" Giovanni smiled brightly, like a child who had just been given candy. "That's right. It was swallowed by the sea and perished." CO Geo went completely blank for the second time. It took a long time before he could speak up helplessly. "The destruction of your homeland sounds like a story far too heavy to tell someone you just met for the first time." The other maintained his gentle tone to begin another speech. "Please listen to me." CO Geo said no more, just looking intently at him. "All right, I'll listen carefully." Giovanni immediately sank into memory. What's left in that world now is probably just merfolk hiding at the bottom of the sea. Our planet has shrunk like a chessboard and become a dungeon following certain rules. CO Geo finally caught the key phrase, a dungeon. He seemed to vaguely find a new clue. "I remember you sung Unmention This." Another dimension appearing along with a great catastrophe. Facing him, Giovanni remained as radiant as the sun. That's a concept our world didn't have, so I didn't know about it. But I understood the moment Lord Geo called me. We are both Geo, but we are certainly not the same person. We are simply two people who miraculously share a lot in common, yet remain completely separate human beings. Giovanni's attitude became exaggeratedly respectful. However, from this moment on, my soul will merge with yours. Lord Geo, you may consider it a form of resurrection and transmission. I will blend into you, spend more time, create memories, and continue living like that inside the root. In contrast, Geo's expression remained cold. The other smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling. It might still be an unfamiliar concept to you, but you already live there. He was still completely in the dark about this new concept. Where I am now is the root. I also heard a newly met friend explain what the root is. Giovanni patiently explained step by step, but that's just the name Earthlings gave it. So we can't know its real name or what form and rules it holds. For a small soul like me, all I could do was hear the call and answer you. Speaking up to this point, his hands tightened slightly from tension. Even so, if possible, could you look after the sun god in my world? Meanwhile, Geo's face grew increasingly blank. He just wanted to dig a hole and hide. Me? I'm just a normal human. How could I? That's too much pressure. Seeing this, Giovanni couldn't help but burst out laughing. When I was alive, I thought so too. But except for the root, even gods will be forgotten without believers. That doesn't mean the sun will cease to exist. But as a child, I can't help but worry. As long as you remember him, chat with him occasionally, and borrow his power. As a priest nurtured by sunlight, I don't think this will be too burdensome for you. Geo seriously pondered this offer, but seemed to misunderstand the point. So, basically it's like visiting lonely old folks, right? Then he agreed instantly. I'm great at this. In Geo's mind was just the image of wrinkled old people. I have volunteering experience back in college. Hearing that, Giovanni's face lit up with joy. That's a relief then. I'll leave everything in your hands. He seemed to be getting interested in this. Is there anything else you want? The other looked at Geo with a strange gaze. Isn't the request to take care of a god burdensome enough? This was a complete miscommunication. It felt like it at first, but not anymore. For someone who lived in a mountain village in Kangwon like me, performing a little entertainment for old folks is nothing. But upon hearing that, Giovanni froze slightly, as if reminded of something. He unconsciously blurted out a name. Aria. Geo looked at him in suspicion. Aria. Giovanni's eyes sparkled with gentleness, yet carried a hint of sadness. That's my student's name. Please grant her an ending. Outside the house, sunbeams danced on the leaves. Honey sat at the edge of the bed, tilting its head at Dad. Geo's head drooped like a statue. A mechanical sound from a system echoed in his head. Sensing something wrong, Honey let out a worried chirp. Geo's body felt frozen from the inside out, the bone-chilling cold becoming unbearable. Wrapping his arms around himself, he tried to keep his voice as calm as possible. Dad's fine, honey. Yet his whole body kept trembling in agonizing pain, as if his flesh were being torn apart piece by piece. Whose feelings are these? He was slowly assimilating with Giovanni. Because of that, his train of thought devolved into chaos. Giovanni was cold enough to break out in a cold sweat. I'm okay. Scattered pieces of his memories surfaced like fragments of a broken mirror. The bright smile of his former pupil, Aria, flashed through his mind. There's no problem at all. At this point, Giovanni's tears burst forth like a broken string of pearls. His appearance and Geo's overlapped as a result of the assimilation process. Giovanni's body trembled, though it was hard to tell whether it was from the cold or pure emotion. Then he burst into tears before vanishing completely. I was once so happy. Night fell, and the streetlights cast a warm glow that pushed back the dark. Two figures, one tall, one short, appeared on the street. This is horrible, Iser. Everywhere you look here, it's just sunshine. A second later, the lights suddenly clicked off in an eerie silence, and the two figures vanished in an instant. Elsewhere, Bisa Bayal's hands, clad in gold rings, flew rapidly across a computer keyboard. A smug grin broke out across his face. This should be enough to take precautions. Displayed on the monitor was a notice regarding Geo. New employee notice. Recently, a minor, unfortunate issue involving a ghost story occurred within the guild. All staff members are required to get acquainted with a new employee to prevent any future misunderstandings. The light from the computer screen made Bisa Bayal's pupils look all the more scheming. The very next day, a wave of panic quickly spread through the office. Did you guys see the new official notice they posted? Huddled in groups of 3 and 4, the employees began whispering among themselves. Most of them found it utterly baffling. Did you guys see the new official notice they posted? An appraiser named Du-Han voiced his doubts to a coworker. This whole black cloak thing, that's about that, right? The ghost everyone's been talking about lately. The more cowardly ones were breaking out in a cold sweat from sheer panic. So, what does that mean this Geo guy in the black cloak is actually a human, or what? Up on the upper floor, Song-un paced back and forth, groaning in misery. The guild leader isn't the type to use official notices to play jokes. How are we even supposed to interpret this? Miho could only offer an awkward smile at his co-worker's questions. Interpret what? No matter how you look at him, the guy is clearly not human. But the notice basically tells us not to show an attitude and to mind our manners. Hearing that, everyone felt a chill go down their spines, and the atmosphere turned noticeably heavy. A guy named Tion couldn't help but vent. Besides, digging into it will just mean more paperwork for us. Miho simply shrugged in resignation. At least when there's overtime, they pay us well for it. CO Geo stood up from the conference table, completely drained of energy. I'd rather not get paid if it means I don't have to work. I need to get home and walk the dog. Over here, a hunter named Sei-chin was handling the investigation of the incident in the exhibition room. Makes sense. So that means this CO Geo is a human after all. As for the commotion about the ghost, it turns out it was connected to that painting in the 5th basement exhibition room. The guild leader must have decided it's safe to just leave it alone. Let's just follow the rules so it doesn't mess with our lives. As if catching the signal, Tion immediately motioned to his co-worker. Miho's group wrapped up their plan too. Song-un was still busy lamenting miserably. That painting is managed by you, Song-un, right? That means we're fine, right? Man, I was scared to death. Du-Han didn't know how to comfort him and could only let out a sigh. On the days you Song-un is busy and can't make it, we have to handle it ourselves. Hearing this, he collapsed internally, practically on the verge of passing out right there. What am I supposed to do now? Sei-chin walked by, saw the scene, and clicked his tongue in annoyance. Looks like I'll have to treat the appraisal team to a meal in a few days. On another side, Song-un had already sought out Bisa Bayal with a look of complete helplessness. You sure picked the right staff. Turns out we can get through this smoothly without any internal drama. Resting his chin on his hand, he grinned like he'd just hit the jackpot. Every single one of them is delightfully indifferent. They heard about a new employee and didn't even bother asking a single question. On top of that, they hate overtime more than death itself. I absolutely love these guys. Thanks to that, we've handled the collector staff so they won't act rude to Geo. So at least from here on out, Geo won't have any erratic outbursts inside the guild. Song-un looked at him with a serious expression. That'll prevent internal trouble within the collector. But Geo's standing is already what it is. So to avoid any incidents when he comes into contact with civilians, I think we also need to arrange things so the public sees him as an S-rank hunter. Bisa Bayal had already thought about this issue, but he was still weighing his options. I'm not sure how things will play out if we suddenly announce that an S-rank hunter just appeared out of nowhere. Especially now, when hunters get as much attention as celebrities or idols, and national pride in them is through the roof. Once rumors start flying, his story is going to spread in the blink of an eye. Don't you think? Song-un voiced his opinion firmly. Actually, I think that might be for the best. For the children of the root, their level of danger changes depending on the scale of the story they carry. So if Geo's story is scaled down to a human level, his safety margin will actually increase. Hearing that, Bisa Bayal instantly showed immense interest. A scaled-down scale? Now that's another fascinating idea. If Yu Song-un, one of the gardeners, says so, then it must be right. On the flip side, he maintained his usual professional demeanor. Either way, we need a place to prepare for the worst-case scenario. So I've already booked a hotel specifically reserved for beast-taming hunters. As soon as the words left his mouth, the expression on his face gradually shifted into something cunning and calculating. Got it. I'll play it by ear and handle any damages, as long as it doesn't turn into a total massacre. So please make sure Gio has a fun trip. Hearing this, appraiser Yusong unsecretly rolled his eyes. As long as it doesn't turn into a total massacre? As the person who had to tag along with him, I just hope whatever the guild leader is worried about doesn't happen, and that we can wrap up this tour smoothly. The elevator came to a stop at the basement floor. Song let out a long sigh and stepped out. All I could do is hope Gio behaves himself nicely. But his footsteps suddenly froze, because CO Gio was already waiting there, draped in a cloak that made him look no different from a fan. Song stood rooted to the spot staring at him, a sudden chill running down his spine. He looks different. Song tried to compose himself and greeted him first. Sorry to keep you waiting. Only then did CO Gio lazily look over at him. Not all. I just got here early. Song Yuan's heart skipped a beat as a bad premonition began to swell within him. Even Gio's voice was completely different from usual. His tone was strangely refined, and the suffocating pressure stemming from their difference in rank had completely vanished. As if reading his mind, CO Gio immediately explained, I used a little trick. Song blinked at him in total disbelief. A trick? He didn't come right out and mention his assimilation with Giovanni. I tried adjusting myself so people wouldn't get startled when they see me. Judging by your reaction, looks like my experiment was pretty successful. Yu Song-un, to explain this, we have to turn back the clock to 2 days after the synchronization with Giovanni. Even though CO Gio was utterly exhausted, he still had to soothe the anxious Honey. Yeah, Dad's gonna be fine. He reached out and gently petted it. Only then did Honey finally stop squawking. At the same time, a seed of doubt gradually rose in CO Gio's mind. Meet a compatible host, get their consent, then execute the mission of that world and assimilate it. That's how it works, right? He looked at the little bird dozing off in his hand. The progress was much faster when he was in Giovanni's personality. But even when he wasn't in that state, the assimilation rate itself was steadily climbing on its own. Scattered fragments of Giovanni's memories also began surfacing in CO Gio's mind. Even though they're memories I never lived through, remembering them piece by piece feels like recalling a past life. And Giovanni's emotions and memories are gradually fusing into me. He was a warm, affectionate person who possessed a gentle charm that could bring people together. And while he harbored grand dreams of peace, he was someone who cherished the everyday moments with those around him above all else. Turns out such a saintly person actually existed in this world. Giovanni Batlon. Once he started feeling a bit better, CO Gio lazily made his way downstairs. It's a rare feeling, having my left and right brain feel like they're functioning completely separately. Occasionally, Giovanni's personality still pops out, but snapping back isn't hard at all. It's as easy as blowing my nose. Besides, it's just as the system advised. Right at that moment, CO Gio's stomach growled loudly. While synced with Giovanni's personality, he actually felt a craving for food for the first time in a long while. I feel hungry, and on top of that, I'm starting to get tired. I need regular sleep, and now I even have to clean the bathroom. CO Gio felt deeply satisfied being able to enjoy delicious food once again. Thanks to this, I'm starting to look a bit more human. Back to the present, CO Gio's stomach was growling loudly again, meaning he was currently starving. He couldn't help but urge. So, shall we get going? Song snapped back to reality and quickly led the way. Right this way. He felt as though his soul were drifting away into the clouds, unable to process what was happening. Looks like I was worrying about the wrong person all along. Afraid that regular humans would be crushed by his raw power, he went ahead and scaled down his own rank before showing up like this. Meanwhile, CO Gio was casually enjoying the piece. There sure are a lot of floors. Song felt so much regret he wanted to travel back in time and slap himself. What Gio did was no different from chopping off his own limbs and crawling around. It was a horrific act of self-harm. He felt like he was on the verge of a total breakdown. Gio, are you okay? CO Gio had no idea what was going through his head, but answered anyway. Yeah, I'm fine. The elevator quickly came to a stop at the building's ground floor. Even his habit of giving gifts out of nowhere. Thinking back, that was a pretty concerning trait, too. If bad people try to approach him, It's going to be a massive headache. Along the way, Geo maintained a polite demeanor toward the Collector Guild members. Instead of Geo's random, impulsive actions, I should have been preparing for and worrying about the idiots who might come over to provoke him. Geo stood still before the unfamiliar city stretched out in front of him, a flash of astonishment crossing his face. They say 10 years can change the landscape, but compared to the one time I stepped outside before, this place is... He was slightly taken aback as all kinds of races walked past like it was a fashion runway. The scenery was far richer and more vibrant than before. Geo kept watching, his mood gradually brightening up quite a bit. This view is so amazing, it makes me feel like worrying about decomposition was totally pointless. He couldn't help uttering a clueless, country bumpkin comment. People are just casually walking around carrying terrifying-looking swords. As if they heard him, those people shot him looks sharp as daggers. More and more eyes filled with suspicion and scrutiny darted in their direction. Geo quickly lowered his eyes. Sure enough, even after dropping my rank, I still draw attention. Someone couldn't help but twitch his eye. At the very least, you still radiate the aura of an S-rank hunter. He quickly pulled the cloak to cover the face of the guy next to him. Just to be safe, keep your head up for now. Geo complied without any resistance. Sure, got it. Song guided Geo along the street. We'll take this sky train to the restaurant. Tagging closely behind, Geo marveled internally. This really is a marvelous modern wonder. Could the world truly have developed this much in just 31 years? Song suddenly held out his bank card. Here's my card for the fare. Whole body suddenly exuding the grand aura of a filthy rich CEO, he added, if there's anything you want to buy, just use this card. It has no spending limit. Geo accepted it, suddenly feeling an overwhelming wave of pressure. Why are you handing me a card with no spending limit? You're scaring me. Song pretended not to notice the other guy visibly trembling. Just go ahead and swipe it. Riding the escalator up, Geo looked down at the city with an unfamiliar gaze. It looks like public transit. But why are there so few people? Is there a specific reason? Song gave a genuine, serious thought to the question. Nothing major, really. Then he dropped a line that was painfully realistic yet cruel. It's just expensive. Geo was utterly rendered speechless. Public transit is so expensive that people can't even afford to ride it. Turns out capitalism has been thriving all this time. No, it feels more like the wealth gap has gotten way worse. After settling into a seat on the bench, Song glanced down at his watch. Though usually, there'd be around 10 people or so. But right now, it's 8:38 a.m. People are at work, which is why it's even emptier. This line hit Geo like a heavy blow. During work hours? He thought his ears were playing tricks on him. Did I just mishear that? In contrast to his shock, Song remained completely unbothered. Yeah, it depends on the company, but the average start time is 7 a.m. Inside, Geo let out a massive WTF. This country has zero human rights. Honestly, instead of returning to society just to become a capitalist slave again, living as a talking painting sounds way better. Right at that moment, white snowflakes began to quietly fall from the sky. Song looked up and casually remarked, "Oh right, do you remember that fish-shaped pastry I gave you last time?" Geo froze for a second, assuming the guy was asking for a favor in return. "Yeah, I'll make it up to you soon." Song ended up getting flustered himself. "You really don't have to do that, but anyway, those things are considered street food. If we're lucky, we might bump into a few stalls while walking around. Not just fish pastries, but probably octopus balls, takoyaki, egg bread, and iced oolong tea too." After rambling for a bit, Song untested the waters and asked, "Do you know what oolong is?" Seeing Geo looking completely baffled, he had to carefully choose his words. Oolong is... Well, Geo himself felt completely helpless. Every now and then, I feel like this guy doesn't even view me as a fellow human being. Sure, I really did turn into a haunted painting, though. But hey, thanks to being treated like a monster, he's totally cool with me having no money and zero common knowledge. It feels like having a black card sitting right in my pocket. And so, Geo bluntly voiced his request. "I want to try it." Song looked thoughtful. but didn't refuse. I'll try to look for one. But don't get your hopes up too high. There aren't many of those stalls around. People complain that they ruin the city's aesthetics. Besides, it's not the kind of job city folk want to do. On top of that, one single noise complaint not only ruins their business, but if they're from the provinces, they might even struggle just to get entry into the city. Hearing this, Cogio immediately grasped the situation. Sounds like there's strict discrimination between city residents and provincial folks. This remark caught Song off guard for a second. Well, I guess that's about right. Gio pressed further, looking as if he wouldn't rest without an answer. Why is that? Song paused upon her for a long while before replying, I don't really know how to explain it, but that's just the general vibe of this society. I find it shameful myself. But right now, we categorize each other by assigning tier levels. People living in this city who are hunters with proper jobs are Tier 1 citizens. Generally speaking, hunters from B rank and up are Tier 1, as long as they aren't criminal hunters. Even if their income or job isn't great, anyone living in the city is Tier 2. Meanwhile, provincial folks are usually Tier 3. The poor people living on the border between the provinces and the city don't even get assigned a tier, so there are no official records on them. But by default, they're lumped into Tier 4, while criminals, including red hunters, are Tier 5. People classified as Tier 5 are no longer treated as human beings. In other words, the law permits executing them on the spot. Cogio didn't respond, but he fully understood the situation. This isn't just a matter of the wealth gap getting worse. This is a society where that very structure has become a part of everyday life. Mulling it over, he then asked out of suspicion, is there a reason for that division? Song still explained thoroughly. The biggest factor is the infrastructure built for the defense lines. This is a world where dungeons can pop up anytime, anywhere. Among the monsters that weren't cleared out early during the Great Cataclysm, several individuals actually settled down permanently on Earth. For that reason, there's a main defense wall surrounding the city suburbs, and the materials used to build houses are harvested from monsters, so they can withstand most attacks. Second, there are safety management officials inside the city, plus plenty of hunters, so if an incident occurs, it gets handled quickly. But resources like that aren't infinite. As a result, in the provinces, if you lower your guard even a little bit, there are a million ways to die. Song flipped the golden brown, aromatic slices of meat on the grill. By the way, I picked this place because they don't use monster meat. Upon hearing all this, Cogio's face went blank again. From food ingredients to building materials, and all the way to the status of hunters who are viewed on par with weapons of war. He mechanically held out his bowl. People eat monster meat. Cogio felt like his entire worldview had just been completely shattered. Common knowledge about everyday life had shifted entirely. Who would have thought the world would change so brutally in just 31 years? But the moment he tasted a piece of meat, he felt like he was floating on cloud 9. At the very least, this bulgogi tastes insanely delicious. The sole ray of light in this world turned catastrophe. After finishing their meal, the two walked over to a crystal-clear stream to digest their food. This is the Trong Di Tron stream. It's the middle of winter, but it's still warm, right? Song acted like a tour guide, introducing the surrounding landscape to Cogio. The city's landscape management team cast magic on it, so they manage the environment around here like a greenhouse. Anyone can enter, except for Tier 5 citizens and dangerous monsters. Right at that moment, a puffball-like bird flew over. Here's a bird I've never seen before. Song directed his gaze at the creature resting tamely in Cogio's hand. Yeah, that's a type of monster that has completely lost its aggressiveness toward humans, just like that bird. Gio thoughtfully stared at the flock of puffball birds swarming toward him. Turns out it's a monster. Song felt a bit bewildered. Species like that have adapted to live peacefully alongside us, so we've gradually stopped unconditionally exterminating them. These birds seem to really like you, sir. Cogio was thoroughly enjoying the moment. They look so cute. Song suddenly took the initiative to suggest, the water is warm, too. Why don't you try dipping your feet in? Naturally, he didn't dare do anything that violated community standards. Am I allowed to do that? Who would have thought the other person would go ahead and entice Cogio? It's fine. There's nobody around at this hour anyway. He quietly gazed at the water, which was as clear as a mirror. Gio's bare toes were slowly lowered into the water. The comfort allowed him to relax completely. The smell is different from that odorless water back in the day. Just like that, Giovanni's physical appearance was subconsciously revealed. The water is truly beautiful, clear and deep. Gio was still busy enjoying the water that carried a strange, sweet fragrance, entirely unaware that Song Yuan's face had turned as pale as a ghost. Giovanni's memories instantly rushed in, evoking the water that resembled the sea in that place. A bell-like, clear laugh suddenly burst from Gio's mouth. Why does this place smell like the ocean? A look of terror filled Song Yuan's eyes. Seeing the ripples of water Gio was playing within his hands, Song Un found the person before him completely unfamiliar, especially with that bright smile. In an instant, his face turned as dark as the Grim Reaper. You're Gio, right? Gio replied gently. That's right. He smiled softly and introduced himself. My name is Gio. Song Yuan's entire body froze instantly upon hearing the terrifying news. Only after a long while did he regain his composure. Here, this is your room key card. My room is right next door, so call me if you need anything. Gio also responded cheerfully. Sure. Song Un didn't forget to leave a reminder. Dinner is booked for 6:30, so let's meet up at 6 o'clock. A bright smile gradually formed on his lips. All right then, get some rest. See you later. But just a few seconds later, he completely collapsed the moment the room door closed shut. Floods of memories came rushing back into Song Yuan's mind. The thing I saw earlier was definitely not human. He seriously reevaluated the issue. Maybe because he's conscious of being in Korea, Gio always introduces himself as Gio. The image of Gio kept flashing through his mind. After witnessing that transformation, I deliberately asked if he was Gio. Even the other person's smile was etched deep into Song Yuan's memory. He defined himself not as Gio, but as Gio. His body was completely exhausted at this point, able to do nothing more than drag his heavy steps along with a bitter expression. You let your guard down just because Gio's rank dropped. No matter how much he dresses up to look a bit human, he can never truly become one of them, because he's the very embodiment of nature in human form. Song Un couldn't help but collapse helplessly onto the bed. That's terrifying. Meanwhile, on Gio's side, everything was as calm as if nothing had ever happened. So this is the view from the 45th floor? He playfully messed around with Honey. Really? Dad's having a great time, too. Too bad I can't feed you since I snuck you in here. Saying that, he excitedly tossed it up into the air. That's right, when we get back, let's make whatever we want with the leftover fruit syrup. In contrast to Gio's completely blank mind at the time, Song Un was still locked in an intense mental struggle. Still, everything has gone smoothly so far. Maybe in his own way, he's trying really hard to imitate a human. But for now, he's still that same kind-hearted Gio. He glanced briefly at the time, ticking on his watch, praying for this trip to end without any incidents. And the very moment he uttered those words, Gio once again had a reaction to water. At the canal leading to the restaurant, Song Un was so startled his face went deathly pale. He desperately reached out and hugged the other person tightly, only daring to let out a sigh of relief once he felt safe. You startled the driver, sir. The driver's whole body couldn't stop trembling violently from the sudden situation that had just unfolded. Gio couldn't help feeling awkward. I'm sorry. I've never seen a waterway like this before, so I just got too curious. But Song Un still couldn't bring himself to believe it. Even so, he still vividly remembered the words spoken earlier. This place smells like the ocean, too. It caused the anxiety within him to surge with each passing second. If you suddenly act like you're about to jump off the boat like that, Song Un helplessly expressed his feelings. I was just worried you'd get hurt, so it's fine. Hearing that, Gio felt deeply grateful. Thank you for understanding. He thought for a long while before deciding to speak up and pry. Do you happen to like the ocean? Getting asked out of the blue made him feel a bit emotional. Well, Song Un took the initiative to explain. The water here is affected by aquatic monsters, causing the water level to rise higher than the land, so they had to open up waterways to let the seawater flow through. Song Un tactfully probed. It was the same at the pig stream this morning, so I wondered if you had a special liking for the smell of the ocean. Gio didn't mind sharing his thoughts either. Not really. Suddenly, he remembered something important, yet he smiled softly and surmised. I think Giovanni likes it. In the end, he couldn't hold it back and let it slip out loud. I believe he likes it. Hearing that, Yu Song-un was completely dumbfounded. What kind of half-yes, half-no answer is that supposed to be? Gio scouted around curiously. Are there mermaids here too? Song-un caught the slip-up immediately. He just said there are mermaids here as well, but outwardly he still tried to maintain a composed front. Mermaids? Waves of thought continuously enveloped his mind. Does he have some kind of destiny tied to the ocean or mermaids? In the end, he decided to answer the other person. Occasionally, those types of monsters show up too. Even when they aren't monsters, they're entities with that kind of form. Those are the subjects of worship in legends or mythology. They become known and believed in by humans, and then manifest as real monsters in this world. Gio couldn't help but fall silent upon realizing the heavy tone of the person before him. Every single word from Yu Song-un gradually carved itself into his subconscious. Right now, our planet has shrunk down like a chessboard and become a dungeon that abides by certain rules. After a long period of time, they finally docked. We're here. Yu Song-un was briefly dazed by the gorgeous scenery. The restaurant is so magnificent. This is where the remnants of a fixed dungeon were turned into a restaurant. That's why the exterior looks so flashy. Hearing that, Gio was also somewhat curious. A fixed dungeon. Seeing through it, Song-un proactively probed. You don't know much about dungeon types? He then went straight to updating the other person's knowledge. Dungeons are roughly divided into fixed dungeons, meaning they're fixed in one spot, and mobile dungeons that shift according to their own rules. Those are further categorized into phantom dungeons, manor dungeons, and entrance dungeons. Phantom dungeons have no physical boundaries, and they usually trigger by swallowing people who meet random conditions. All of those actions are carried out through the dungeon's trigger conditions. Gio spoke up in extreme dissatisfaction. That sounds insanely unfair. At the same time, thousands of thoughts swirled in his mind. Just going to a convenience store and suddenly getting dragged into a dungeon? That's right. Even though phantom dungeons are considered pretty rare, they're extremely hard to detect and cause massive damage, making them one of modern society's biggest headaches. Hearing that made Gio utterly flabbergasted. The scale of modern human worries is way too massive. Song-un casually glanced around and introduced. Fixed dungeons form like this, creating landforms on Earth that originally weren't there. His voice grew gentler with every word. The dungeon that sprouted here used to be related to cooking and a civilian chef who wasn't even a hunter, but accidentally got dragged in. That chef cooked food that touched the master of this dungeon and cleared the raid. It's that type of dungeon. The image of the chef popped up in Gio's mind, making him marvel greatly. That's a really touching story. While enjoying the dish, Yu Song-un carefully explained, after clearing the dungeon, that person awakened as a chef class, and even at 92 years old, they're still active in the profession. Hearing up to this point, Gio was stunned beyond belief. 92, Song-un quickly spoke up to reassure him. If you met them in person, they only look to be in their 50s. They say awakeners age much slower, starting from at least Sirene. On the contrary, Gio still couldn't stop marveling at the wondrous information. I really want to stop being surprised by this changed world, but the fact that a 90-year-old still has to grind away at work is genuinely terrifying. Yu Song-un stated firmly in a serious tone. Either way, through this method, the terrain of the alternate dimension replaces the existing terrain. And even after the raid is cleared, only the rules disappear while the structure remains on Earth. That's a manor dungeon. He carefully shared each piece of information. Finally, there are entrance dungeons. Those appear with just a single doorway. And by stepping inside, you can enter the dimension of another world and clear the raid just like a video game. Gio softly replied, I get it all now. Song-un quickly switched the topic to ask, how's the meal? Is it all right? Gio immediately flashed a radiant smile. It's way beyond all right. It's absolutely superb. Deep inside, his emotions kept pouring out, too. It was a wonderful meal that reminded me of eating together with my students. Yu Song-un could only smile helplessly. I'm glad you seem to have enjoyed it. On the inside, however, he was screaming in sheer agony. Please, Gio, if you're going to pretend to be human, at least pretend to pay a little attention to your surroundings. Humans are much more social creatures than you think. He let out a sigh and made up his mind. Time to get out of here quickly. Then directly suggested, so, shall we head over to Gyeongbokgung Palace next? It's a spot you absolutely cannot miss when touring this area. Co Gio's face subconsciously lit up with a flicker of emotion. Gyeongbokgung Palace. Waves of nostalgia slowly surfaced in his subconscious. I used to take my class there for field trips a few times. I wonder if those kids are living well in a world like this. He offered a soft, happy smile. I'm really looking forward to it. The bustling night sky gradually blended with the welcoming calls of shopkeepers. Please drop by again next time, hunters. Yu Song-un smiled softly and complimented. It suits you really well, Gio. The eye-catching appearances of the two quickly drew the attention of those around them. Who was that customer just now? Stop daydreaming. He also responded politely. Thank you. Co Gio couldn't help feeling a bit strange. Every time I came here in the past, I was on escort duty, so I've never worn a hanbok before. He felt a bit nostalgic about the memories of bygone years. Coaxing kids who complained about being bored was real hard work, but putting hanboks on them and taking pictures was so much fun. His mind at this moment felt completely healed by the flood of memories. Thinking up to this point caused the corners of Co Gio's lips to subconsciously curl into a smile. So that rigid, conservative place from back then has turned into a place with this kind of meaning now. He took the initiative to ask, Mr. Yu Song-un? Song-un stopped in his tracks, slightly surprised. What is it? The creatures soaring in the sky quickly caught Co Gio's attention. What are those? Yu Song-un couldn't help but feel suspicious. I thought you'd know about entities like that. He then went straight to probing. Those are fairy tales. Living stories. Is this your first time seeing them in a place like this? The children of the root rarely show up at tourist spots. Co Gio gradually sank into deep thought. Children of the root. In the end, he decided to softly probe. You mentioned something similar last time, too. Song-un caught the other person's train of thought right away. You mean the phrase, children of the root, which caught Gio a bit off guard as well. Yes. Could you explain it in a little more detail? Yu Song-un gently explained. The root I mentioned when introducing the garters last time. It's hard to sum it up simply, but you could call it the god of gods. It manages the balance across the entire universe and all dimensions, while creating all sorts of rules. It's basically like a system. Only at this point did Co Gio gradually realize what was going on. So, it's a system. Song-un continued his explanation. The things born from the root branches of that root are called children of the root. Among them, those entities over there are the children of the root, known as fairy tales. And even though they look human, they don't actually think like humans. They're just nature imitating a certain concept. Yu Song-un stole a glance at Honey, who was hiding behind the person across from him. The children of the root are very good at dressing up their appearance, so no one knows what their true nature really is. Co Gio asked with a bit of doubt. Can't those people over there see the children of the root? Seongu nodded slightly in admission. That's right. People who can see those things are extremely rare. Gio's eyebrows subconsciously knitted together. They say back in the day, it was hard to see the children of the root like that. Yu Song-un seriously reevaluated the matter. But ever since Earth came under the influence of the root, dungeons appeared, and awakeners came to be. The existing ecosystem itself has changed. Seems like that's why humans can see them now, even if it's still very rare, he confidently declared. As you can see, I'm one of those few talented individuals who can see them. Meanwhile, Co Gio maintained a calm front. I guess I am too. Deep down, there wasn't even a single ripple of emotion. A talented person who underwent awakening through a painting. Yu Song-un lost his cool and squeezed the milk carton in his hand tight, ultimately forced to put on a customer service smile. Yeah, I suppose so. On the inside, however, he was screaming frantically. This guy just viewed himself as a monster again. didn't he? Suddenly, a commotion not far off reached Cogio's ears. I hear people arguing. The sounds of clashing echoed continuously, growing clearer in the space. He nonchalantly judged the situation. A brawl? Security will be here to arrest him soon. Out of nowhere, a status window abruptly popped up, presenting a quest right in front of his eyes. Yu Song unwatched with immense curiosity. Look, they're hauling him off in shackles, while Cogio was still focused on examining the surroundings. He just looks like a decent young man who got set up. Why would they? Suddenly, the system blared a warning that the target's danger level had reached the absolute maximum. He felt a wave of concern and suspicion. He's insanely dangerous. Is it really okay to let someone that dangerous walk around freely like this? Cheoncio sensed the intense gaze and immediately scanned his surroundings. Cogio couldn't help but shudder slightly. Did I stare too much? Right at that moment, Honey, who had been resting quietly inside his sleeve, suddenly flew out into midair. His body froze in an instant, as if struck by Jiao Chan's freeze skill. Yu Song shook his head helplessly. Hiding it doesn't mean I can't see it. Only then did Gio gradually realize the issue. Wait, is that the waterfowl you showed me earlier? The color is a bit different, though. Cogio gently admitted. Yeah, its name is Honey, which made Song grow increasingly frantic. The name isn't the problem. Can you even bring that thing outside with you? Hearing that, Gio gave a small nod. Looks like it. Yu Song was so helpless he was crying tears of silence. All right, I guess the end of the world is probably right around the corner now. At the same time, he wasn't feeling any better inside. How on earth am I supposed to report this incident? Cheoncio's gaze showed no sign of shifting away just yet. Waiting until the other person had completely walked away, Cogio finally dared to let out a sigh of relief. That was scary. I don't think he liked me very much. His entire body couldn't stop trembling violently. Maybe we should head back before we accidentally bump into him and he starts trouble again. After thinking for a long while, he decided to speak up and suggest, I want to go back to the hotel. Yu Song was a bit surprised to hear that. You want to head back already? Sure, if that's what you want. Cogio excitedly laid out his plan. Before we go, I'm just going to buy 3 more cups of spicy tteokbokki rice cakes. Hearing that, Song could only chuckle in amazement. You really love eating, don't you? Meanwhile, on Cheoncio's side, the atmosphere turned tense beyond belief. He seriously mulled over the issue. What the hell was that guy just now? Saying that, he slowly strolled through a secluded alley, a growing sense of unease welling up inside him. Normally, I would have gone over to ask what the hell he was pulling, but even though he covered it up tight, that bastard still gave off goosebumps. Cheoncio tried to analyze the situation. The guy walking next to him was the hunter appraiser Yu Song, right? Finally, everything clicked. Fuck, I knew something was off. He's definitely an awakener. He couldn't help feeling a surge of fear. In just a split second, it felt as though all his personal information had been completely exposed. Awakeners who can peek into people's thoughts or memories at will, or those with skills to see through the past, show up in shockingly high numbers. A sly smirk gradually crept onto his face. The rebirth festival of the cult is happening soon, too. I had to scrape my way up to priest just to set up this whole arrangement. If that bastard realized something and snitched to the cult, it's going to be a huge mess. Cheoncio's face immediately darkened as he asserted. As expected, I have to kill him. Suddenly, Honey's chirping echoed from high above. He instantly switched into high alert mode. What? I've never seen this bird before. Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind. No, wait. Could this belong to that guy? Is he a beast-taming hunter? Cheoncio examined it in nonstop excitement. So you sent this thing to spy on me. Saying that, he lunged straight in, preparing to attack. Classic rookie hunter mistake. I'll catch this bird and trace the tracks right back to him. Cheoncio's face still maintained its arrogant smirk, but the very moment his hand touched Honey, his entire body felt like it was being completely burned to ashes. His eyes widened in absolute shock at the unbelievable situation. What the hell is this? Inside the room, Cogio was currently draped in an atmosphere darker than anything else. Dazedly waking up from a long dream, The very first thing he thought of upon regaining consciousness was honey. Geo begged in utter desperation. Honey is gone, please. He was in so much pain, he was crying tears of silence. Can't you just leave me in peace for a bit? At this rate, I'm going to cry my eyes out. The sky was dyed in the brilliant orange of the dusk, settling over the quiet park. Ever since I was little, I've been able to see strange things. The boy in the blue shirt looked at the kid in the brown shirt and said, "What are you talking about? There's no one over there." The kid in the brown shirt pointed back in response. "No, can't you see it?" Hearing that, the blue shirt kid asked again, "Did you see a monster or something?" He glanced to the side with suspicion and caution, his mind racing. "But it's not a monster." He added in a soft voice, "Oh, sorry, I must have misseen it." But in reality, right where he was pointing, a dark shadow was gathering with a face staring straight into the eyes of the kid in the brown shirt. Sometimes they looked almost human, but I knew they were nothing like animals or plants. The shadows of curious people gathered around, whispering, "Did you hear that house caught fire?" The whole family burned to death inside. Meanwhile, a man slouched along carrying a bag as he stepped up the dimly lit stairs. The kid in the brown shirt, now grown up, was walking while contemplating. "I don't know exactly how it caused those people to die, but I don't feel any murderous intent from them. Even so, their sheer existence alone is enough to threaten humans. They usually don't harm anyone, so as long as I don't provoke them, I'll be fine. I just need to keep pretending I can't see them." Suddenly, a strange and dangerously menacing voice rang out. "So this is where you were." His eyes widened in extreme tension. The Bung Pang fish-shaped pastry vendor was Cha Eun-hyuk, alongside his younger sister, who was an F-rank hunter, Cha Ara, and their youngest brother, Cha Yi-sol. You have awakened as a priest, and he raised them as a third-class citizen. Then a day would come when simply avoiding them wouldn't be enough anymore. The gloomy shadow stepped forward and grunted, "How much for a bag?" The vendor's eyes bulged in horror, cold sweat running down his cheeks as the sound of his pounding heart thundered in his chest. What did this guy just say? Did he really just ask for the price? This is the first time I've ever seen one mimic a human this perfectly. The vendor stammered nervously, trembling as he answered the uninvited guest. "Ugh. 5,001 for 10. He asked in a deep voice, "Do you take card?" Hearing that, he nervously replied, "Cash is better, but card works too." He slowly pulled out a dazzlingly bright gold card. Then I'll take one bag, please." His trembling hands reached out, but he thought to himself, "If I tell him I won't sell to him, will I get killed?" Forcing a smile, he added, "I was just about to close up, so I'll have to make a fresh batch. Would that be okay?" The main character readily agreed, and the card reader gave a beep. Meanwhile, he thought to himself, the card actually worked. Did he steal it? No. Why would a monster even do that? A guy carrying a mysterious bird with him. If so, could this be a tamer hunter? But even so, he still radiates the exact same terrifying aura as those things, especially that bird. It feels so dangerous that its appearance seems like nothing more than a disguise. Once finished, he tremblingly handed the bag over to him. "Here is your bag of fish pastries." The main character bowed his head, reaching out to take the fragrant bag of food, and replied mysteriously, "Thank you. And this is a gift for you." A gorgeous, sparkling blue crystal shone so brilliantly that it left the vendor jaw-dropped in shock. "Huh." The main character continued, "I'm sorry if I scared you, because I made you stop cleaning up and mess things up all over again. Please accept this as a small apology and a token of my gratitude." The vendor waved his hands frantically, flustered as he tried to decline the priceless gift dropping out of nowhere as the guy was leaving. "Oh, wow, sir. You really don't need to do that." The tall, solitary back walked away into the distance, leaving behind a background of vibrant city streets and silent, freezing skyscraper lights. Seeing that he had left, the young man's knees buckled and he collapsed, covering his face as he broke down, letting out all his pent-up terror. I survived. Ever since I started seeing things no one else could see, I always thought I'd die some bizarre death. I really thought today was the day." Tears streamed down his pale cheeks. Shaking uncontrollably, he leaned his back against the counter. His bloodshot, dazed eyes drooped down, then suddenly snapped upward in shock as a massive shadow plummeted down toward his head. His skull was currently being swallowed from above by a terrifying four-eyed monster. Its razor-sharp beak snapped shut, only to unexpectedly loosen and release him. The blinding yellow light gave way to tiny, sparkling honey making an appearance. The bird hummed with a magical, saving light. It then fluttered in circles, spreading its tiny wings and soaring high into the starry sky. The vendor stared blankly as the figure of light vanished into the air. Maybe tomorrow I should find a different spot. The next day, the silver-haired guy stood next to the main character with a bright smile while ordering food. "Oh, are you the man who was selling food in front of the Collectors Association building before?" The main character chimed in. "One bag of bung ipang, please." The vendor's face contorted and twitched since he had relocated his stall, completely unable to believe the rotten luck of running into him again. The world really is tiny. The silver-haired chibi asked casually, "I haven't seen you around there lately. You must have just moved here." He clutched his head and replied, "If I stay in one spot for too long, I'll get caught when they do patrols." Saying that, he sank into thought. Today he's hanging out with someone who looks like a first-class hunter again. So is he really a hunter? A hunter? Suddenly, he pushed to ask a question while his entire body trembled uncontrollably. Just asking out of curiosity, "Are you by any chance a tamer hunter?" The main character gave a slight nod, hiding his face under the rim of his hood as he casually replied, "Ah, thanks for earlier this morning." Yu Song-woo blurted out frantically, "What are you talking about? Did you go out at dawn?" The main character confirmed, "Yeah. Honey disappeared, so I went looking for it." The silver-haired guy yelled, "I told you that you have to let me know if you want to go out." The main character nonchalantly said, "I found it right away, though." Hearing that, he was still furious. "No, that's not the point." Watching from the side, the shop owner thought to himself, "I knew it. He really is something that requires a first-class hunter just to keep him in check, right? Did I really almost die while selling bung ipang yesterday?" Watching from the side, the shop owner thought to himself, "I knew it. He really is something that requires a first-class hunter just to keep him in check, right? Did I really almost die while selling bung ipang yesterday?" The vendor nodded frantically, crying tears of sheer frustration. Yes. After he bought the bung ipang, that bird he calls honey suddenly grew massive and bit down on my head. Twice, no less. The main character flinched, his thin lips panicking as cold sweat broke out all over him. The silver-haired guy turned to interrogate him, despite being just as terrified. "Do you have anything to say in your defense?" The main character lowered his head, avoiding his gaze. "I am terribly sorry. Are you injured?" The vendor scratched his head, laughing awkwardly to ease the tense, embarrassing atmosphere. "Oh no, it didn't hurt. It felt more like a joke. At least I think so." The main character added, "Even so, I'm still sorry." So, hearing that word, the silver-haired guy froze in confusion, thinking to himself, "Huh? So?" Slender hands gently lifted the rim of his hood, revealing the handsome face of a blond man. "Please let me check if you have any injuries. I'm a doctor, so I know how to examine wounds." Song-woo's blue pupils constricted. A doctor? Even with the memories of a 29-year-old human named Cogio, I never could have imagined that he was a doctor. A bright, sun-like smile that could capture anyone's heart spoke up. "Excuse me." In another dark corner of the city, sharp high heels stepped proudly, dragging a trail of dazzling pink magical light that wove across the aged stone pavement. How strange. Did the trail suddenly end here? I even chose that person carefully, too. Did someone erase it? The dark red brick corner was submerged in twilight shadows, casting a faint streak of light as an echoing monologue spoke up. Even the Sun Temple or the media have no idea why this priest vanished. There isn't a single trace of a fight or any sign that he fled. We originally intended to ruin the Sun Festival, but the target we needed to go after has gone missing. Iser, the only galaxy by my side, I'll have to count on you for this. Iser's glowing yellow eyes now widened with unwavering determination, his side profile hardening to display absolute loyalty. Your Majesty, rest assured, I will not disappoint you. The mermaid woman's face contorted horrifically in the dark. Her bulging eyes turned solid white as her sharp teeth grinned wildly. Don't be so tense. After all, We came here to have fun together. The narrow red brick alley cluttered with trash cans was bathed in dim streetlight. The two of them gradually faded into the quiet void. The scene shifted back to the main character as a dazzling golden light burst forth. He pressed gently on the forehead of the panicking vendor, who was breaking out in beads of sweat. Huh, my head feels kind of warm. The main character, in the form of the priest, replied, Ah, you had a small scratch on your head, so I took the liberty of purifying it to prevent you from catching any infections. The vendor's face went completely blank and stiff. Yu Song-woo's deep blue pupils shrank violently, and both of them gasped in their hearts. Purification? He can even use holy magic? How is that possible? Will I ever find out Gio's true identity? The vendor snapped out of it, his eyes shining brightly as he leaned far over the counter, shouting with a wide grin, Are you a believer? He sank into his own thoughts. I thought he didn't usually worship gods, so I'm misunderstood. He's such a high-tier hunter that I even mistook him for a monster. But I've never heard of a monster that could use holy magic. To perform such high-level purification rituals on his own, he must be an extremely devout believer. Why isn't he working as a priest? The memories faded, returning to reality as he asked out of curiosity. Since you're such a devout believer, will you guys be going to check out the Sun Religion's initiation ceremony this time? The silver-haired guy casually spoke up. Oh, is it already time for the Sun Temple to hold their initiation ceremony? He immediately confirmed, Yes, they usually hold it in the middle of winter. Actually, my youngest brother just awakened as a priest, so he'll be participating in this initiation ceremony as well. Seeing a fellow believer made me think of him, and I suddenly felt really happy. The silver-haired guy tilted his head slightly with a polite smile, offering advice. I heard that the larger the crowd gathered, the easier it is to catch the god's gaze. He continued, That's right. So I'm also a bit worried about how my youngest brother will get by if he isn't chosen by the god during the ceremony. The silver-haired guy remarked softly, If he's already awakened as a priest, his holy magic compatibility must be top tier. He'll definitely land a desk job in the temple either way. The vendor smiled brightly, handing the paper bag over toward the main character. I hope so. I heard they're going big this time, so make sure to come watch. Yu Song-woo reached out to take the bag while the main character gave a silent nod beneath his hood. We'll be there. Drop by the collector building to visit us next time. As they walked together, the silver-haired guy glanced at him and asked, Did nothing really happen at dawn? The main character replied, Honey said it's innocent. Hearing that, the silver-haired guy sank into thought. I'm not sure if innocence in the eyes of a primordial entity is the same as it is for us humans, but I guess I just have to trust him. He held out the card and added, Are you planning on going back inside the painting today? With eyes softly closed, he gently confirmed, It's really lively outside. So many things to see and experience. But I don't think I belong here. Once he finished speaking, thoughts ran through the main character's mind. For a week, harmless painting to exist, this world has become far too harsh. I am scared, Kropka. Yu Song-woo silently stared at his face and thought, That's right. A person who is kind and sensitive to good and evil like Gio had to trade away his very nature just to come outside. How could he possibly stand it? Then he spoke aloud, But I'm glad to see you happy. Are you planning on going to see the initiation ceremony? The main character said he wanted to see it and was curious, so the silver-haired guy followed up, I'll call you when it starts. For now, just rest inside the painting. After a short outing, Gio slipped back into the painting and slept straight through the entire day. He lay fast asleep with eyes closed on the bed, the tiny sparkling yellow bird enjoying a warm, deep sleep right beside him. Leaving the blanket meant facing the storms of the world. The system window displayed a line of text. Synchronization rate 14.8%. He cracked his eyes open, his brows furrowing in groggy sleepiness as he let out a lazy groan. As far as I know, I should still be synchronizing with Giovanni, but being inside the painting feels significantly weaker than when I'm outside. The synchronization speed has also slowed down compared to when I touched the water out there. Synchronization rate 12.8%. This must be a unique characteristic of the world inside the painting. Since I stay inside all the time, I didn't realize it but taking a trip outside made the difference crystal clear. Even though I'm synchronizing when I'm inside the painting, is it because I'm considered a painting rather than a human? The main character sat up brightly, stretching comfortably, giving a cocky thumb up as he praised himself with a tada. As expected, I'm awesome. Shall we go meet the old man? Let's prepare plenty of sandwiches. A lagging system display box stretched across the room. Giovanni's quest. Communicate with the sun god. Give the mermaid a conclusion. Honey, right beside him, let out a few chirps as well. The scene shifted to a picnic lunch with triangle sandwiches. A tall back cast a long shadow across the wooden floor, facing toward a painting resting quietly on an easel depicting roaring, tempestuous ocean waves. The blonde priest stood holding a stack of boxes in his arms in front of the oceanic masterpiece, politely requesting permission. May I come in? The painting reacted with a swish as a blinding flash of golden light swallowed the entire space. He slowly stepped through the brilliant spatial portal, sinking into the pitch-black, deep-sea waters that floated with white froth. Thank you. Jagged rock peaks rose from the dark abyss, greeting the small figure kneeling beneath the brilliant, gurgling glow of the sun. Yes, this priest is too late. An entire set of ancient Greek temple ruins lay grandly and quietly submerged at the bottom of the mysterious deep blue water. A gurgling sound rippled out, soothing the apologetic words left behind. Please understand. I just went outside to look at the world for a little bit. The giant, burning mass of the sun emitted a dazzling aura that purified the vast, pitch-black, freezing deep sea. The blond man flashed a haughty, sinister smile as he sat perched on a soaring rock tip beneath the ocean-piercing pillar of light, holding the box. Even though I'm clearly underwater, I can still breathe normally. Is it because I'm already dead in this world? Or because my true nature is still a painting even though I've synchronized? It feels like I'm not bound by the rules of this world. Just like when I was inside that painted forest. The vibrant, hazy sunlight shone down from the glistening, distant rippling surface of the water. His gorgeous face held a tinge of tragic sorrow. Closing his eyes slightly, he let out a bitter sigh. Is that so? That really sucks. How should I put it? It feels like I just lost my hometown. His hand gently popped open the box with a soft thud. A sandwich encased in a bubble sphere floated out into the water current, using the sun's magic to create air bubbles around the food. Right? The food shouldn't get wet, should it? Please enjoy your meal, Father. The sandwiches slowly floated upward one after another. The quest notification board recorded absolute devotion amidst the darkness of the ocean depth. Communicate with the sun god. Completed. Waves splashed white foam, severing the illusion and pulling back to reality with a casual question. Did you say Geo seems to have another personality? Yu Sung-woo let out a heavy sigh, hiding his annoyed, exhausted frustration. I told you I'd compile the report and submit it early. Why did you insist on summoning me all the way here? It's not like I'm only in charge of Geo's painting. Lately, the sea has been violently stormy, so I keep getting called away constantly. Half of the ruler's face glowed with a blood-red light. Hands wearing jade rings rubbed together as he softly repeated, the sea region? Inside the luxurious room, where the silver-haired guy's voice echoed. The primordial entities near the sea are making strange moves. It won't be long before something might happen out at sea. Bisa Bayal said that it wasn't his concern, to which the silver-haired guy replied, I knew he'd say that. How can you just sit there and wait after hearing that? It's not like I can talk to a portrait. His words made the silver-haired guy exclaim. That's exactly why he avoids us and refuses to talk to us. The scene shifted to the quiet darkness of the oceanic abyss swallowing all things. The main character dropped a fishing line at the bottom of the sea and monologued to himself. Everything has sunk to the bottom of the ocean, so catching fish has become pretty difficult. I was planning to treat you to fried fish for dinner, but I'm one of the few people in this world who doesn't know how to swim, so I can't catch them myself either. What? Honey, can honey go hunting? The water droplet bird immediately shook its head. Meanwhile, the silver-haired guy's words to Bisa Bayal still echoed. This is just my speculation as a curator, but ever since Geo downgraded his own rank and went outside to sightsee, he gives off the feeling of a completely different entity, compared to the normal Geo. The guild master rubbed his chin, downgraded his own rank, down to the level of a human, according to his own desires. The silver-haired guy gave a firm affirmation. That's right, it's truly astonishing. A fierce purple light enveloped his savage grin. Astonishing? No, it's disgusting. Stripping away parts of himself without a single shred of hesitation. Is that causing any health issues for him? He seems to look more tired the longer he stays outside. The silver-haired guy quickly chimed in to soothe the mood, but there are no severe abnormal signs. It's just that the normal Geo is a bit more arrogant. Maybe? No, arrogant isn't the right word. He is extremely polite, yet radiates an overwhelming authority. Even while introducing himself as an ordinary 29-year-old human, he observes and praises the staff as if they were admirable little ants. And even though he emphasizes that it's just a thank you gift, receiving candy or jewelry from him feels like being blessed by a supreme entity. But after downgrading his rank, those things are gone. He truly gives off the vibe of a real human. And every time he comes into contact with water, he isn't even the 29-year-old CO Geo. He keeps introducing himself as anymore. His appearance changes, and he uses holy power without the slightest effort. To me, it feels like he has become an entirely different person. Yet, he still introduces himself as Geo. The scene spliced back to the main character talking to Honey. You can catch them, but you want me to close my eyes? Why, Honey? Dad will never stop loving you no matter what you look like. I've seen your potential ever since you told me about biting that pastry vendor guy. Seeing it use its foot to push his hand away, the main character monologued. You really don't want to show Dad? Why are you so adorable? Look, Sun God, your grandchild is this adorable. Huh, I'm really curious to see what you'll look like. But if it makes you comfortable, I'll keep my eyes closed as long as you want. Just call Dad whenever you're done catching them all. Golden hair sank into the peaceful darkness as the silver-haired guy's voice rang out. Geo's portrait. That name wasn't given by humans. What we are seeing is the name designated by the origin itself. The detailed explanation of transcendent power. The skills used by awakened individuals, otherwise known as hunters, all draw power from the origin. In other words, it was the system itself that assigned the name Geo to this portrait. The silver-haired guy's words continued without pause. That is not a name humans can easily alter or disregard. And the fact that we cannot read any information beyond those things means the origin itself has forbidden us, as if telling us that we aren't allowed to read this information. How remarkably reassuring that is. Baisa Bayal, with a dark look on his face, added, sounds just like a story about a god. What if Geo is an entity that humans simply cannot define because he is a god? Yu Sung Woo's face hardened, his eyes wide with tension at such a terrifying prospect. The main character, carrying a packed box of fish, walked with a bright smile. Father, let's enjoy dinner with fish by the wooden cabin. A dazzling light sparked like 1,000 bursting stars, washing away all cold despair at the bottom of the ocean. The silver-haired guy replied to him, regardless of Geo's true nature, didn't I tell you before that it's dangerous to hunt settings like that for a living story? They are entities that can become disasters purely through human belief. The teddy bear emerged from the light as the manifestation of his father, waddling toward the main character. The corners of his thin lips curled slightly into an elegant, faintly melancholic smile. Baisa Bayal asserted seriously, that's just speculation. Surely you agree that Geo is anything but ordinary. The silver-haired guy sat down and replied, that is precisely why I plan to approach this transformed state of Geo with far greater caution. Geo always believes himself to be a human, yet he isn't flustered at all by his true, non-human nature. The silver-haired guy's train of thought intertwined with the present image of the main character, possessing power capable of threatening all of humanity. Yet he is so completely carefree. If we carelessly pry about his different personalities and he realizes his true nature, there's no telling what might happen. The main character whipped up a bowl of golden battered fried fish and offered, all done. Dinner is served, it tastes best while it's hot. Turning to the teddy bear, it only let out a single coo, making the main character think to himself, I even used sun magic to make it extra crispy. The main character took a delicious, crunchy bite of the fish beside the quiet teddy bear. He smiled with contented closed eyes, enjoying the exquisite taste melting in his mouth, his heart fluttering with bright sparkles amid the tranquility of the cozy living room. Maybe because it's so fresh, it tastes amazing no matter how I cook it. Hearing the teddy bear say something, he replied, "Sounds great. I tend a little vegetable garden, so why don't we pick a few kinds to use for our next meal?" Seeing him about to leave, the silver-haired guy called out, "Are you preparing the hunter card that Geo will receive?" He casually replied, "Of course. For the sake of humanity, he must remain a human, and that bird too. You said it's a creature Geo created by drawing it, right?" Yu Sung-woo confirmed, "Ah, yes. He brought it with him this time, but nothing unusual happened." The wicked corners of Bayal's lips curled up mockingly. "No, that's not what I mean. If he can create food, jewelry, and even living creatures simply by drawing them, then what happens if he draws an entire landscape?" The main character froze dead in his tracks in the middle of the hallway, stammering in sheer shock. "Whoa, what on earth is going on here?" A bizarre garden with thorny, fiery vines wrapped around giant, glowing metallic ears of corn. What happened to my precious little vegetable garden? Where did the cherry tomatoes, corn, and peas go? What happened to my precious little vegetable garden? Where did the cherry tomatoes, corn, and peas go? A pool of fresh red blood spread across the floor, catching his gaze.